Chapter 520. Shining glanced at him and still answered lazily. Oh, sect master is willing to forgive her? Jianxing was delighted. Then, I won't forgive you, she interrupted. The joy on Jianxing's face froze, and he asked subconsciously, why? Is this very hard to understand? Shining tilted her head, as if she couldn't understand why he would ask such a question. After thinking for a while, she suddenly turned to Mushroom and said, Mushroom hit him. Mushroom faltered, and immediately nodded obediently. Okay. It bit the fruit in its mouth, stretched out its hands, and formed a mushroom the size of a bowl. Then, it threw it at Jianxing's face with force and even shouted loudly, Hey! Jianxing didn't react for a moment, only to see that mushroom slap his face. The mushroom that had just formed was soft, so it naturally didn't hurt. It bounced and fell to the ground, but left a black and wet circle on his face. That was a shiitake mushroom. Jianxing was completely stunned, and was about to explode in anger. But Shining looked at Mushroom first. Mushroom, apologize. Oh. Mushroom nodded, took out the fruit in its mouth and said, I'm sorry. Jianxing. Do you understand? Shining asked. If you understand, go back and continue your sword practice. Not all apologies could be forgiven, especially apologies with a purpose. Jianxing glanced at her. Many emotions flashed across his eyes, but finally, they sank helplessly. He cupped his fists and bowed again, then turned and left, a little shakily. Oh, also, Shining suddenly spoke again. About what happened before, I really didn't take it to heart. I didn't want to say it at first, but you guys asked for it, and made Father Nyo angry. Now that it's settled, let's stop here. If they still don't give up. She narrowed her eyes. When the time comes, and they make Father Nyo sad, I will really get angry. Jianxing paled. He did come with the intention of getting her to forgive his sister first. As long as she agreed, he could beg Master to bring Jilin back. But he didn't expect that she actually saw through it at one glance. His heart sank, and he immediately quickened his steps and left the back mountain. The mushroom had a blank look on his face. He had absolutely no idea what they were talking about, but he did not pay much attention to it either. He jumped down and picked up the huge mushroom on the ground. He jogged to the side of the immortal vein and planted it. Don't waste it. It was a huge one. Shining had sad enough. Thinking that Father Nyo should have left the kitchen, she waved at Mushroom. I'm going back. Goodbye, Shining. Mushroom also waved his tail. Only then did she slowly stand up. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from beside her. Master, Shining hesitated. She looked around, and then remembered the transmission talisman in her storage bag. She reached for it for a long time before taking it out. Chef. Master. The voice was filled with pleasant surprise. I send you messages every day. Why are you only responding now? Oh, I put it in the bag and forgot. There were too many things in the bag. Fortunately, there were some fruits in stock, so he flipped the talisman to the top. Master. The voice in the talisman sounded a little aggrieved, but it was immediately replaced by deep worry. Are you okay? Did he eat well and sleep well? Did he step on the blankets at night? Oh yes, you should have finished the vegetables I left behind, right? I asked Father Nyo to bring back some new ones. Did you get them? If it's not enough. What? Father Nyo has brought vegetables. If she had known earlier, she would not have pretended to water the plants. Shining hurriedly quickened her steps, and walked towards the back of the hall. Master, don't worry. I know those are not enough. I've already made more and asked Hong Meng to send them over. Good chef. Fortunately, it was still all right. Master, I will only be back in a few days. You have to stay in the back hall. Don't go down the mountain. She had already gone down once. Also, although the back mountain is smaller than Invincible Sects, you have to find someone to lead the way. If Radish is not here, you can ask Mushroom. Also, don't eat too many fruits. Eat some pastries occasionally. They are all in the storage bag. Be patient and look through them. The sky is turning cold. Although Master is not afraid, it's better to wear a few more clothes. I've put them in the cabinet in your room. If anything happens, you must inform me first. I've already set up the transportation array. I'll rush back immediately. MMMMMMM. And Master. I miss you so much. Shenning stopped in her tracks. She faintly felt a warm current pass through her heart. The corners of her mouth lifted for no reason. Master? Master? Seeing that she did not reply, Chef called out carefully. Was she angry? Shenning laughed. Really? Huh? You really miss me that much? Shenying's smile deepened. What do you think? Huh? Chef was stunned. What do you mean, what do you think? Can't say it? Then write 3,000 words of your feelings. There are no restrictions on the style. Poems are excluded. I'll hand in the manuscript in 3 days. He had never received a love letter before. He wanted to give it a try. Oh, okay. Good. 3 days later, a white spirit bird flapped its wings and flew to the back hall. A certain old father recognized the aura that belonged to Chef. Thinking that something big had happened in Purple Night Palace, he conjured a seal. Instantly, the spirit bird turned into a thick stack of letter paper and landed in his hands. Looking down, he saw that it was densely filled with words of longing for a certain foodie. The words were so beautiful and full of emotion that it made one's hair stand on end. Loman's chest tightened. Instantly, he just wanted to slap the thing in his hands, hard on a certain person's face. Go to hell with your dog food. Fall. A degree. After returning from a training trip, there were originally 9 disciples, but now they were reduced to 4. Lone Moon was still a little frustrated, but he did not regret it. He chased those disciples down the mountain not only because of Shening, but because their mentality was indeed not suitable. If they were in the small world in the past, they might not be directly abandoned if they were in a large sect. But these people were originally cultivated by them. They were going to establish their own sects in the future. In other words, they would be the role models for all cultivators in this world in the future. But with their temperaments, who knew what kind of cultivators they would produce? Actually, he could also guess why they were like this. These people who were chased out were all about 10 years old when they first came up the mountain. They had never seen any big waves or experienced any big setbacks. Suddenly becoming cultivators above all living beings, they naturally thought that they were a cut above everyone else. They were too confident in their own identities. Even after Fatty had clearly reminded them, they still believed that Shening was just a mortal to be trifled with. If she was a mortal, she should be below them. Chapter 521. Shening had never shown her strength in front of them, and these disciples rarely saw her. But it was not that they could not see the importance that Fatty I Ching and himself placed on her. Those few older ones would still have some reservations, but they had never experienced this, so they trusted themselves more. They thought that after learning some abilities that surpass mortals, they were different from the rest. They even formed the idea of the strong being respected in their minds. So they targeted her without any reservations. They even thought that even if they were wrong, he would not punish them because of a mortal. Such thinking was completely contrary to Loman's original intention. Continuing to let them grow would only make them more arrogant and conceited. They would even completely look down on mortals who were inferior to them. He wanted to find a bodyguard for the human race, not a group of people who would rule and trample on them. He could not help but think back to those people he had taught in the past. The reason why Invincible Sect did not go astray was because Yu Hong and the others were trampled by high-level cultivators in the beginning. They had seen the deepest darkness, so they knew that sunshine was not easy to come by. Fatty was imprisoned in Divine Imperial Sect for many years, and knew the evil in people's hearts, so he cherished the good in the world even more. Even in Song Ren's small world, that group of talisman cultivators who exorcised deviant ghosts, their purpose of cultivation was only to protect the civilians. But these 9 people were completely different, especially those younger ones. They had opportunities that others did not have from the beginning, and this opportunity gave them the ability to be above everyone else. So they naturally became arrogant, no longer seeing the weak in their eyes, thinking that they had already transcended, but forgot that they also came from there in the beginning. Those 3 older ones had experienced things and Jian Xing must have suffered for his sister before, so he still had reservations. But the others completely did not have the reverence that they should have. A group of people who had no reverence for the world. How could he expect them to turn back and protect this world? Lone Moon suddenly realized that he could not completely put the hope of the human race on these few people. He had to make more preparations for everything. After all, apart from entering school to teach, there was another word in the world called self-study. As long as there were learning materials, although there would be a difference with or without a teacher, the overall general direction should not be a problem, right? Like chef, what was the difference if he had a master or not? He still had to rely on self-study. After Lone Moon thought it through, he asked Fatty to prepare mini legacy jade slips. Thinking that most people still did not know how to use spiritual energy, he also prepared some books on drawing spiritual energy into the body. Of course, these were all copied by Fatty, who asked this world to not have a photocopier. He also instructed Fatty to forge a batch of spiritual weapons. After that, he started to wander around the continent of the human race like a bookseller, tossing a book here and a jade slip here and there. He even casually opened a few small mystic realms and threw some spirit plant seeds inside, letting them grow freely. Then, he returned to Purple Night Palace and grabbed a few immortal meridians. He had to think of a way to dilute it, turn it into a spirit vein, and then return to the human continent to plant it everywhere. The entire continent was filled with spiritual chi. He even gritted his teeth and tossed the spirit artifacts and immortal artifacts he had collected from Fatty back then around, or set up some array formations to set the time for them to appear. Only then did he stop. He suddenly understood Lan Hua's feelings back then. The feeling of throwing treasures everywhere and not being able to take them back was too painful. Hence, he took out his account book and carefully recorded all the accounts on Hong Meng's head. Yes, it was finally not so painful. Hong Meng, who was passing carrots to Rabbit in Purple Night Palace, shivered. He kept feeling that something was missing. After doing all this, Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He believed that in no time, there would be many cultivators appearing on this continent. Of course, he would also be more strict with the teaching of his disciples. After all, they were taught by famous teachers. It would be too embarrassing if they could not compare to those who were self-taught. Fortunately, there were only 4 people left. They were easy to teach. Jian Xing was a sword cultivator. Lone Moon was busy, so he could only use the old method and throw him into the 10-level sword array. As for the remaining 3, they were all taught by Fatty. It was much easier than before. Pills, talismans, arrays, and artifacts all had their own strengths. Especially the oldest one. He was already in his 50s or 60s when he started cultivating. He had gone through a lot of hardships before he succeeded in foundation establishment. He was the last one among them to do so, but he was also the calmest one. Fatty was originally worried that he would give up due to his lifespan before he could cultivate to the end. He didn't expect him to actually persevere all the way. He was also a dual cultivator of talismans and arrays. Even though his cultivation fell behind the others in the beginning, he slowly became the most solid among the 3. He learned the most deeply and was the most hardworking. Occasionally, he would even give pointers to the other 2. Even Fatty couldn't help but pay more attention to him. Considering that they had already adapted to spirit chi, Lone Moon let Mushroom stop planting. The spirit chi on the mountain was also directly changed to immortal chi. This way their cultivation increased even faster. Among them, Jian Xing was the fastest. Ever since the last time, Lone Moon had talked to him a few times. That was his sister after all. It was normal that he couldn't bear to be chased off the mountain just like that. Lone Moon explained the relationship to him. Seeing that he didn't have any resentment, he let him continue learning with ease. He learned very quickly. Usually, he could learn a sword technique that Lone Moon demonstrated once. In less than 10 years, he had reached the 5th level of the 10-level sword array. Although he wasn't as crazy as Chef back then, he was improving at a godly speed. He was indeed a natural sword embodiment. Time passed quickly. What needed to be taught was more or less taught. Those that they couldn't learn in a short time were also remembered. Because the heavenly Tao of this world hadn't been born yet. There was no heavenly tribulation. when their cultivation increased. It was just that once they reached the realm, they directly rose. The three that Fatty taught were already at core formation. Jianxing's cultivation was already at the nascent soul stage. Lone Moon felt that it was time for them to go down the mountain and really understand the dangers of this world. Considering the unpleasant experience of the previous experience, Lone Moon decided to bring them there personally. He also dragged Shining along. Why me again? She was unhappy. Chef isn't back yet. Do you think you can survive staying in the sect alone? With no one cooking and watching over her, she would either get lost or starve to death. There was a high chance that it would be the former. Should she tell her that Chef would actually get the spirit bird to send food over every once in a while? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to explain to her. He directly pulled her down the mountain. Among the 4 disciples, 3 of them were fatties. Fatty naturally followed along, bringing Mushroom along with him. With Fatty watching over him, Mushroom had been working hard in his cultivation these few years. He cultivated 1 tail into 5. Although he wasn't a big demon yet, he was no longer the little demon he used to be. Naturally, he also learned how to truly transform. He didn't need to drag his tail everywhere to plant mushrooms. Thus, what was originally a disciple experience became a trip for the whole sect. Chapter 522. Lone Moon flew down the mountain with Shun-Ing on his sword. They walked towards the immortal ascension stone by the sea. It was densely pasted with slips of paper. Some were from a long time ago, while some were very new. All kinds of wishes and requests were written on the slips of paper. Ever since the last time they opened the mountain to recruit disciples, mortals would often come here. Some people started pasting all kinds of wishes on the stone, hoping that immortals could help them fulfill them. They had already used the immortal ascension stone as a divine stone. But among these slips of paper, there were also some requests for help, like demons causing trouble. When Lone Moon saw them when he went out to spread his wealth, he would also solve them. Slowly it became a custom. Those who really met with difficulties would come here from far away to seek help from immortals. To distinguish, the slips of paper would be marked in red. He glanced at it and saw 3 red slips of paper. He took them down. 2 of the locations were rather far away. The closest one was a 2-day journey. He glanced at it and decided to make a trip. So he handed the slip of paper in his hand to Jianxing and said, "Let's go to the west, to this place called Xuhong City." "Yes, master." Jianxing nodded and took it. He glanced at it and handed it to the other 3. Just as they were about to fly on their swords, a female voice suddenly sounded. "Brother." A woman who looked to be in her 30s ran over. She looked at Jianxing in the middle with a look of surprise. She looked a little familiar, and she had cultivation, just that she was still in the qi refinement realm. "Little Lin." Jianxing was stunned. He blurted out, "Why are you here?" Fatty was shocked. This person was actually Ji Lin, Jianxing's younger sister. It was just that her current appearance was no longer that of a young girl. She looked much older than Jianxing. The joy on the woman's face faded and was replaced by worry. Tears even gathered in her eyes. "Brother, I've been waiting here all these years." She turned to look at Lone Moon and knelt down. "Exalted Master, I was young and ignorant back then. I made a huge mistake. I already know I was wrong. I've been regretting it all these years. I dare not ask for Exalted Master's forgiveness. I only hope for a chance to forgive me." Lone Moon's expression darkened. He glanced at her and said, "Really? Then tell me, where did you go wrong?" Ji Lin was stunned, as if she did not know how to answer. He subconsciously looked at Shining, who was at the side, rolled his eyes and said, I shouldn't have been disrespectful to elder sister Shun. No, it's Master Shun. Before she could finish speaking, Lone Moon laughed coldly and said, "You don't even know what you did wrong, so how can you say that you did wrong?" If she really knew that she was in the wrong, she wouldn't have appeared here today, much less in such a weak state. Back then, Fatty had crippled their cultivation, but he hadn't harmed their foundations or caused them to lose their memories. If she worked hard enough, she would have long since regained her cultivation of a mere foundation establishment stage. However, she was still in the chi refining stage. Lone Moon did not look at her again. He turned to the others and said, "Once you're ready, we can set off." With that said, he summoned his sword and pulled Shuning into the air. Exalted Master. Jilin looked anxious. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, she could only look at Jianxing brother. Jianxing took a look at her, held it in, and turned to fly away on his sword. The others followed, but Mushroom took a look at her and called out softly, "Little sister Jilin." "Mushroom." Fatty called her and pulled her away. Jilin still did not give up. She just followed behind them on her sword with a sad expression. Jianxing turned back to take a look. A moment later, he turned back and continued to fly on his sword. "Do you think that I was too heartless to those disciples?" Lone Moon looked at Jianxing and asked. Jianxing was stunned. He shook his head and said, "No, they were the ones who made mistakes and let down Master's expectations. Now they are just returning to their original position. It's just that." He could not help but look back again. Then he said seriously, "Jilin is my sister after all. Although I know that she can never return to the sect, I can't be completely heartless to her." He looked troubled, but there was no resentment in his eyes. It's good that you understand." Lone Moon nodded. This disciple could see clearly. There was no need for him to worry. Although she is no longer a disciple of the sect, there is no need to be too distant to her. It's good that you know your limits. "Yes, Master." Lone Moon did not continue speaking. He continued to fly towards his destination. Shuning, who was behind him, suddenly turned half her body from behind Father Niu and looked straight at Jianxing. Jianxing looked up subconsciously, only to see Shuning giving him a big smile. He was stunned for a moment. His face was blank. But strangely, he suddenly felt a little flustered. Lone Moon and his disciples flew for 2 days. They finally arrived at Xuhong City. This was a relatively large city in the west. The note described the strange things that had happened in the city recently. A few months ago, the people in the city seemed to have collectively contracted a strange disease. They would inexplicably fall into a deep sleep at night, and everyone would have nightmares. They would only wake up in the morning. The locals thought that there was a demon causing trouble. They went to the seaside to seek help from immortals. In order to avoid alerting the demon, they disguised themselves as a merchant team, entering the city to buy goods. Lone Moon found an inn to stay in and let them ask around. The 4 of them inquired around the city seriously. They only returned after sunset. They began to exchange their findings. "I heard that the people here fall asleep every midnight. It seems that the demon only appears at night. But there is no remnant demonic aura in the city. It seems that it is not a demon." The people in the west said that this has been happening for 5 or 6 months. Not only do people fall asleep at night, but there are also people who fall asleep mysteriously during the day. That's right. The people in the east said that too. And those who fall asleep during the day will only wake up after 4 or 5 days. Some even need more than 10 days. After they finished talking, they all looked at Lone Moon in the middle. It was obvious that they had no clue. "Did you go to see those people who were unconscious?" Lone Moon reminded him. Jianxing finally spoke up. "Master, I have gone to see a few of them, but there are no other abnormalities in their bodies. It looks like they are just sleeping." "Yes." The oldest of the 4 also said. "I have also used spirit chi to check their bodies. There is no trace of demonic aura invading them." Lone Moon nodded. "Have you thought of any countermeasures?" The 4 of them looked at each other before answering. "We plan to wait until midnight tonight. After we have ascertained the situation, we will talk about it." Chapter 523. Then rest first, wait till midnight. Lone Moon announced the end of the meeting. The 4 of them got up and left one after another, returning to their own rooms. Seeing them go far, Fatty turned back and said, "Master, although there is no demonic chi in this city, there is ghost chi. I'm afraid." "I know." Lone Moon nodded. He could naturally see that the one in this city was not a demon, but an evil ghost. Just keep an eye on them and nothing will happen. It's good to gain experience. Fatty nodded, then got up, and was about to leave with Mushroom. Lone Moon turned around, only to see Shuning sitting still, looking straight at him. What? Supper? Not today, let's go. Sigh, he missed chef every day. Shining had to take out the pastries in the bag, eating as she went out. Oh right. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something and added, Shining, at night you better not. Before he finished, he saw that she had gone far away. He could only take back his words, forget it. It was just an evil ghost. The one in this city was not a demon. From the moment they entered the city, he could see it. That was an evil ghost that fed on human vitality. And it was very likely to be promoted to a ghost king soon. The reason why the people in this city were unconscious was because part of their vitality was sucked away. Ghosts were actually easier to deal with than demon spirit beasts, of course, if they could be found first. These disciples had never come into contact with ghosts and spirits. It was normal that they could not figure out what it was. As long as they kept calm, they would not be controlled by the evil ghost. With Shen Ying's ability, even the most powerful evil ghost would not be able to capture her. After all, she was the person who had beaten the Ghost King to tears. So if anything happened to anyone, she would definitely not trouble my ass. For all, where is she? Lone Moon looked at the empty room, 10,000 horses galloping in his heart. Fatty was also confused. I didn't see Miss Shen come out? Find her. Quickly. He should not have let down his guard on that person with no sense of direction. Yes. Fatty was about to go out when he suddenly heard the sound of a bell ringing in his ear. The sound was simple and distant, instantly spreading throughout the entire Tsuhong city, drilling straight into everyone's ears. For a moment, they only felt that their divine sense was shaken, as if something was about to leave their bodies. The four disciples hurriedly circulated their spiritual qi to protect their heart meridians before they could suppress that feeling. Suddenly, there was a clang at the door. Jilin, who had followed them all the way here, had fallen at the entrance of the inn downstairs. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, and there was a faint sign that her soul had left her body. Little Lin. Jian Xing was shocked and directly jumped down from the building. He helped the person on the ground up and separated a bit of spirit qi to protect her heart meridian. Only then did Jilin's expression look a little better. Brother. Jilin looked at the person in front of her with lingering fear. Suddenly, as if recalling something, she looked up at the people upstairs and said, That's right, exalted master. I saw Sister Shen on the street just now. I called out to her, but she did not respond. It's like she's being controlled by something. Lone Moon was shocked. In a flash, he appeared beside her. Where did you see her? On the main street in front. She pointed outside. Lone Moon turned and rushed out, searching in the direction she pointed. The others hurriedly followed. Only when they came out did they realize that although it was pitch-black midnight, the streets outside were filled with people. Upon closer inspection, they realized that they were all residents of the city during the day. Without exception, all of them had their eyes closed, their faces numb. Like wandering souls, they walked in the same direction, as if they were being controlled by something. There was no sound at all. A disciple mobilized his spirit qi to check their souls, but his face turned pale. Their souls are not in their bodies. The others were stunned. One by one, they pushed open the doors of the houses on the street and walked into the rooms, only to find that there were shadows lying on the beds. They were the souls of those people on the street, but their faces were in pain, as if they were experiencing some terrifying dream. It's that bell just now, Jian Xing said in a low voice. Their souls were shaken out by the bell. Something is controlling their bodies. Let's find Shining first, Lone Moon said in a low voice and flew up directly. He released his divine perception and scanned the dense crowd on the street. Only then did he realize that the familiar figure on the street was walking step by step with the crowd toward the city entrance. Upon closer inspection, there was a faint trace of ghost qi wrapped around her leg. There. Lone Moon flew down directly. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the ghost qi on Shen Ying's leg. He stopped instantly. The others also chased over. Fatty subconsciously said, Strange, why would Miss Shen be affected by mere ghost qi? Before he could finish, Lone Moon suddenly turned back with a nervous expression. He lowered his voice and said, Don't speak. Ha! Everyone was stunned, and stood rooted to the ground. Did they think that something big had happened to Shining? Upon closer inspection, they realized that she was the same as the other unconscious bodies. Her eyes were also tightly shut, her face expressionless. Only, there was a faint sound of snoring. Fatty. Jianxing. Everyone. Was she sleeping? Her soul did not leave her body at all. She was purely asleep. Before they could react, Lonlin's serious voice transmission sounded in their ears. It was as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Go quickly, move the blankets and pillows in her room over. Don't make any sound, if you don't want to die. The disciples were dumbfounded, but they still obediently went back to move the blankets and pillows. Quick, bring them over to me. Be careful. Lone Moon took the blankets from their hands and took a deep breath. Then, he carefully walked forward and carefully wrapped it around Shining. Then very carefully, he carried her and gently placed her on the blankets that were laid on the ground. Every move was like a slow-motion replay. He even held his breath the whole time, for fear of making the slightest sound. Only when he put her back in the blankets did he let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Thank goodness, thank goodness. She didn't wake up. Father was scared to death. Onlookers, master. Jianxing looked at the figures that had already walked out of the city. He could not help but send a voice transmission. The people in this city. Lone Moon turned back to look at them. Then he nodded and said, Go. If you encounter anything, try to stay far away. I'll stay here and watch Shining. Fatty, look after them. Yes, master. Fatty nodded and glanced at the 4 disciples. Then together with Mushroom, they flew away with the crowd that was leaving the city. Jilin turned back to look at Lone Moon. Something flashed across her eyes. Then, she hurriedly rode on her sword and followed. The few of them chased all the way out of the city. Outside the city, the sky was filled with white fog. The fog was so thick that they could only see about 1 foot around them. The few of them had no choice but to fly down to avoid being separated by the fog. Chapter 524. Let's gather together and follow this group of people. Jianxing instructed in a low voice. The others understood and nodded. That demon definitely had a purpose for controlling this group of people. If they followed them, they would definitely be able to find it. Fatty didn't stop them either. He just followed them from a distance. They followed the crowd for a long time. Suddenly, in the white fog in front of them, spots of light appeared, and there were faint sounds of people. Everyone was stunned. They quickened their steps and walked forward. They realized that it was actually the city gate of Tsuhong City in front of them. They had clearly followed the crowd all the way out of the city. Why did they turn back? And right now, inside Tsuhong City, it wasn't dead silent like when they left the city. Instead, it was brightly lit and noisy, as if it was a festival. From time to time, children carrying lanterns ran across the streets, playing and playing. This situation was strange no matter how one looked at it. What's going on? The disciples were confused. Brother. Jilin subconsciously grabbed Jianxing's hand. Jianxing frowned. After a while he said, Let's go in and see what's going on. The remaining 3 looked at each other and nodded. Then they all walked into the city. But Mushroom shook her head and refused to go. She said, I don't like this place. It's very strange. Can we not go in? They turned back to look at her. They hesitated again. But if they didn't go into the city, they wouldn't know what was going on. Sister Mushroom, don't be afraid. Jilin took a step forward. With an amiable look on her face, she advised softly, Why don't you hold my hand? We will protect you. With that said, she even smiled at her with a gentle look on her face. But she clearly looked older than Mushroom, but she called her sister. It felt strange. Mushroom had a good impression of Jilin. She looked at her, hesitated for a while, but still held her hand and followed them in. Fatty frowned. Something flashed across his eyes. Demons were always more sensitive than humans. Unfortunately, he sighed and could only follow them in. The city was even more lively. The streets were brightly lit. Rows of lanterns were hung. Both sides of the road were filled with all kinds of stalls, selling their wares with all their might. It looked like an ordinary night market. The more they looked, the stranger they felt. but they couldn't tell what was going on. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and asked the person beside him, "Big brother, did something big happen today? Why is the city so lively?" The man looked up at him and said, "You must be from out of town. Our city has a night market every month. It has always been like this." "I see." The disciple's eyes darkened and he continued to ask, "Has anything strange happened in the city recently?" "Strange? What strange thing?" The man was stunned and glared at him with some dissatisfaction. "Our Tsuhong city is peaceful. Don't talk nonsense. Go, don't disturb my business." The disciple could only retreat awkwardly. Everyone else's expressions became a little more serious. Everyone in the city was clearly distressed during the day. Everyone in the city knew about the inexplicable lethargy. But why did this person seem to be completely unaware of it? "Brother, where did Master and the others go?" Jilin suddenly pointed to the front of the street and said, "When we left the city previously, he and Sister Shun, Master Shun were clearly here. I remember this street." Everyone looked around and realized that this was indeed the street they left the city on. But Lone Moon, who was originally nervously guarding Shining, was now nowhere to be seen. But they had only left the city for a quarter of an hour. Could it be that they returned to the inn first? Jianxing's expression darkened. "Let's go back to the inn and ask." So the group quickened their steps and returned to the inn earlier. But the strange thing was that the innkeeper didn't seem to recognize them. He thought that they were here to stay, and that Lone Moon and Shining weren't in the inn. The more they thought about it, the stranger they felt. They all looked at Jianxing, who had the highest cultivation. "Uncle Master Jianxing, what should we do?" He was Lone Moon's disciple, the same generation as Fatty, so everyone called him Uncle Master. "Let's split up first and ask around. We'll decide after we figure out the situation," Jianxing suggested. "For hours later, we'll meet here again." The few of them nodded and dispersed in all directions. Even Mushroom was pulled out by Jilin. Fatty didn't go out to ask around. Instead, he sat down in the inn and waited for them to return. For hours later, they returned to the inn, but their expressions were not very good. "I went to ask around. The people in the city seemed to have forgotten that they were unconscious. It's the same here. I even specially went to the few families that I asked around in the day. They even chased me out. These people seem to be completely different people in the day and at night. Could it be, this is just an illusion? These people are all fake?" The few of them paled. If this was an illusion, then how powerful must the other party be to be able to replicate an entire city? "No." Jianxing shook his head. "They are indeed all people. They don't look like they were created by spells." Everyone was silent. They had no clue at all. Although they were unwilling, they could only turn to look at Fatty beside them. "Exalted Master." Jianxing cupped his fists and said, "Please give us some pointers." Fatty smiled. Seeing that they were indeed stuck in a bottleneck, he reminded them, "This is indeed not an illusion but a dream." "Dream?" Everyone was shocked and looked at each other. "Do you still remember what was written on that piece of paper asking for help?" Fatty glanced at them before continuing. "It said that at night, everyone will fall into a nightmare and only wake up in the morning. The place we are in now is their dream. Someone has taken control of their consciousness and entered the same dream." The few of them were stunned. No wonder those people completely forgot what happened in the day. They also forgot that they would fall asleep at night. After all, it was a dream. When they first saw the white fog, they were probably already pulled into the dream. But didn't they say it was a nightmare? Jilin asked doubtfully. "I see that everyone is quite happy. It doesn't look like a nightmare." The other disciples thought so too. Fatty smiled and said, "Very soon it won't be." "What?" The few of them were stunned. Before they understood what he meant, they suddenly heard a scream. The streets suddenly became chaotic. People kept screaming. A group of people ran past them with panicked expressions. All of them ran back in a panic. "What's going on?" They stood up directly. The next moment they suddenly heard a loud roar. Roar. Chapter 525. Instantly, the sound spread through the entire Tsuhong city. Even the ground shook. The few of them walked out of the inn and saw that a huge monster had suddenly appeared outside the city gates. It was pitch black, and it was impossible to see its appearance clearly. However, pairs of blood-red eyes were glowing as they stared at the city. It was extremely tall, almost twice the height of the city wall when it stood up. It waved its huge claws and slapped hard, pushing down the city wall. Terrified screams could be heard below the city wall. Is this the monster that is harming the city? The disciple subconsciously wanted to pull out the sword in his hand. Don't forget, Fatty reminded. This is a dream. The disciples paused and looked up at the monster in front of them. Could this monster be fake? But it clearly looked so real. Everyone's expression changed. For a moment, they didn't know if they should attack. But the monster was getting closer and closer. It pushed down the city wall directly and was biting towards the panicking crowd. They could even smell the thick stench of blood coming from its huge mouth. The people in the city were frantically running around, but there were too many of them. They couldn't all escape, and there were always a few who fell behind. So the monster bit down, and instantly blood splattered. It was a ghastly sight. It even stretched out 7 or 8 octopus-like claws, entangling those who were running away, and throwing them into its mouth one by one. There was a faint crunching sound of chewing. Everyone's hands tightened, and they desperately resisted the urge to attack. On the other side, something flashed across Jilin's face. She suddenly pulled out her sword and shouted, I can't watch anymore. Even if it's an illusion, I can't bear to see this monster wantonly hurting people. With that said, she rushed over. Jilin! Everyone wanted to stop her, but it was too late. They watched as she flew over on her sword. She summoned a blazing flame and shot it towards the monster. Unfortunately, her cultivation was ultimately too weak. Not only did she not cause any damage to the monster, but she was also entangled by its claws. She was about to be eaten. Little Lin. Jianxing was shocked. He directly pulled out his sword and rushed over. The other disciples also rushed over and began to attack the monster. Jianxing even chopped off one of the enemy's tentacles and saved Jilin. Fatty took a look at them and shook his head. Indeed, they were lacking in experience. Under the joint attack of several people, the monster gradually lost the strength to resist. It suddenly let out a miserable cry and began to flee in the direction of the city gate. The few of them naturally wouldn't let it escape, so they all ran towards it. Jianxing even summoned the sword array directly. Instantly, thousands of swords formed by spirit qi rained down from the sky towards the monster below. Instantly, the monster was nailed to the city gate. The monster let out a blood-curdling screech, and its huge body collapsed with a loud rumble. All the disciples heaved a sigh of relief, but before they could feel the joy of victory, a familiar roar came from behind them. Suddenly, another identical monster appeared behind them, slowly crawling into the gap in the city gate. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. Why would there be more? They had no choice but to turn around and continue to deal with this monster. However, these monsters seemed to be endless. After killing one, another identical one would immediately appear. It was as if they were deliberately trying to waste time with them. Only then did they start to recall Fatty's words. Did he stop them just now, because he had already guessed that this would happen? He turned around to look at the panicking people in the city, but realized that although they were fleeing with all their might, none of them ran out of the city gate. It was as if they were trapped by something. Brother, look, what's that? Jilin suddenly pointed at the corner of the wall and said. Jianxing turned around and saw that on the gap in the city wall that was just pushed down by the monster, there was a faint red glow, as if it was the glow of some sorcery. Without thinking much, he waved his sword and shouted to everyone. There's an array on the city wall. Attack that city wall. Fatty, who was watching the battle below, paled. Stop. Unfortunately, it was too late. Jianxing's sword was already waved towards the city wall. Although the other sorcery was a step late, it also deviated towards the city wall. With a loud rumble, a large piece of the city wall collapsed. In an instant, like dominoes being pushed down, not only the city wall, but everything in the city also began to collapse. The originally brightly lit city began to distort and change shape, as if the whole world was disappearing. All the disciples were shocked. Before they could even see clearly what was happening, they felt their bodies become heavy, and they fell straight down. In the next moment their vision blurred, and they appeared on a piece of flat land outside the city. Around them stood those dazed people who had left the city previously. Everything was the same as when they had just left the city, as if they had never been to that brightly lit city at all. Could it be that their primordial spirits had also left their bodies just now? Before they could think carefully, they felt their primordial spirits becoming unstable. A gush of blood surged up, and they all spat out blood. And in the next moment, the people who were originally standing around them suddenly began to collapse powerlessly. In a short while, they were all lying on the ground. The few who were injured looked at each other. What was going on? But when they looked up, they saw Fatty with a solemn expression. Oh no! Fatty looked up at the sky that was already beginning to brighten. Those living souls in the city. He turned around and summoned his flying sword. Exalted Master, what exactly is this? All the disciples still looked confused, completely unaware of what was going on. Fatty glared at them somewhat angrily, then explained, "Have you all forgotten that the souls of the people in the city have all left their bodies? How are they going to return to their bodies if their dreams are directly interrupted?" Fatty said as he flew up on his flying sword. "All of you stay here and look after their bodies. Don't let that evil ghost come near." With that said, he turned and flew directly towards the city. At this moment in the city, Lone Moon, who was guarding a certain foodie who had woken up, looked up at the sky and immediately frowned. He got up and walked into a house next to him. On a closer look, indeed, the living soul lying on the bed began to become unstable, faintly showing signs of turning into a ghost. But his body still did not return. It seemed like it was too late. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, he walked out and conjured a seal with both hands. A large array appeared under his feet, instantly enveloping the entire city, temporarily suppressing the living souls in the city from dispersing. The next moment the sun slowly rose. A certain someone who had slept soundly on the streets for the whole night also opened his eyes. At one glance, he saw the person sitting beside him with a face full of resentment. "Hey Father Neo, good morning." "Morning my ass." Lone Moon directly rolled his eyes. "In the future before you sleep, you'd better tie a rope to the head of the bed. Even a mere gust of ghost chi could be drawn away." How deep was his sleep? Didn't he have any F***king idea how grumpy he was when he woke up? Chapter 526. Shening was confused. Only then did she realize that she was not lying where she slept last night. She blinked blankly. Forget it. She couldn't be bothered to think about it. It's not important. Lone Moon was about to scold her when Fatty flew back hurriedly. "Master, the people in the city." He had just landed when he felt the array formation on the ground. He heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, Master discovered it first. "What happened?" Lone Moon glanced at him. "Didn't you go to catch the evil ghost? Why can't the people in the city return their souls instead?" That evil ghost must have sensed danger, so it summoned the ghost fog and sucked them into the dream realm. Fatty said awkwardly. They accidentally broke the dream realm in advance. Those people's bodies did not return in time, so. Lone Moon's expression darkened. What was this? They were in cahoots with that evil ghost, weren't they? "Master, time is pressing. I've already asked them to guard those people's bodies outside the city. Let these people's souls return first." Lone Moon nodded. Fatty then took out a gourd Dharma artifact and opened it. He conjured a seal while chanting. In a short while, living souls turned into streams of light and entered the gourd. It took him half an hour to collect the last bit of living souls and seal the mouth of the gourd. "Let's go." Lone Moon flew up on his sword. "You go too." He brought Shening with him. "Shening, where's breakfast?" The bodies of the people in the city were not far from the city. From afar, they could see the ground full of people lying on the ground. 3 disciples were guarding them. Seeing the 3 of them coming over, they immediately welcomed them with joy. "Exalted Master, you're back." Fatty glanced at the 3 of them. "Where are the others? Why are there only the 3 of you?" Jianxing, Mushroom and Jilin were all gone. The trio's expressions changed. They exchanged a look before replying. Exalted Master. After you left, a malevolent ghost suddenly appeared. Master. Miss Jilin was caught by it. Uncle Master Jianxing and Mushroom both chased after her. Fatty's expression darkened. He turned to look at Lone Moon. Master. You stay here and help the people in the city return their souls. I'll go take a look with Shening. Lone Moon instructed. He pulled Shening and followed Jianxing's aura. The two of them did not fly for long before they suddenly felt their surroundings become unusually cold. In the mountain forest in front of them, a large amount of ghost chi had gathered. It occupied the entire mountaintop, and even sunlight could not penetrate it. Lone Moon frowned. Was it about to become a ghost king? He directly flew down and followed the weak auras of a few people to the entrance of a cave. Half of the cave entrance had collapsed, as if someone had fought here. Looking at the remnant sword chi in the surroundings, it should be Jianxing. He summoned a sliver of immortal chi to cover his entire body, forcing the ghost chi to retreat. Subconsciously, he turned around and said, Shening, the ghost chi here is too thick you. Before he could finish speaking, he turned around and found that the ghost chi around them had already distanced itself from her. It was at least 2 to 3 meters away, even further than the ghost chi he had dispersed with his immortal chi. What? Shening tilted her head. I'm fine. I'm going in. Motherf asterisk Kerr. She clearly had a dispelling buff. How did she get controlled by the ghost chi last night? They walked directly into the cave filled with ghost chi. The ghost chi inside was even thicker, but with every step Lone Moon took, the surrounding ghost chi was dispersed by the immortal chi. Although he could completely disperse all the ghost chi in this cave, thinking of the people inside, he did not do so. The cave was very big, and there were forks everywhere. It was like a natural maze. But this was not a difficult thing for Lone Moon. With a sweep of his divine perception, the situation of the entire cave was clear. He walked directly in the direction of the 3 people. The only thing he had to worry about was a certain person who had no sense of direction. This way. Oh! Lone Moon pulled back a certain person who had taken a wrong turn for the umpteenth time. They finally walked to the innermost part of the cave. The surrounding ghost chi was even thicker, mixed with the smell of blood. There were also faint sounds of fighting and waves of shrill ghost cries in front of them. It's right in front. Lone Moon quickened his pace and walked over. After a big turn, a blood pool appeared in front of him. There were a few corpses floating in it. Above the blood pool, a female ghost with a horrifying appearance and a face full of rotten flesh was fighting with Jianxing. That evil ghost was already a half-step ghost king. It was not weaker than a nascent soul cultivator, but the ghost chi on its body was a little weak. It seemed to be heavily injured. Obviously, it was interrupted at the critical moment of advancement and suffered a backlash. Jianxing was also injured quite a bit. His body was full of bloodstains, and the wounds were still carrying ghost chi. Seeming to notice a stronger aura coming in, that evil ghost panicked and could not care much anymore. Instantly, it released all the ghost chi in its body and blocked Jianxing's attack. Its claws reached down and directly sucked up the blood in the blood pool. The original horrifying appearance began to recover. In a moment, it turned into a beautiful woman. The ghost chi on its body was instantly tens of times thicker. It was trying to forcefully advance. Jianxing's hand paused. He was shocked by the sudden increase in the opponent's suppression. Just as he was about to counterattack, that ghost king directly abandoned him and rushed towards Lone Moon and Shenying's direction. Master! Jianxing's expression changed. He directly mobilized all the spirit chi in his body and slashed with all his strength. In the next moment, that ghost king let out a sharp and piercing scream. It was hit directly. The ghost chi around it dissipated instantly. The body that had just gathered seemed to have broken and dissipated. But suddenly, a red light shot out from the center, rushing towards Shenying's direction. Be careful, Lone Moon subconsciously reminded. He was about to make a move, but he saw that the red light stopped. Shenying was holding it tightly with one hand. That red light struggled desperately in her hand like a loach. But no matter how hard it tried, it could not escape. It could only let out a series of sharp and piercing sounds. All right, he would be retarded to worry about a cheat. Shening grabbed that red light and looked at it curiously. She even flipped it left and right. That sharp sound became louder, as if it was screaming. Exalted Master. The exhausted Jianxing also walked over. His face was pale. He must have gone through a tough battle. He looked down at the red light in Shen Ying's hand. This is the remnant soul of that evil ghost just now. It should be. Lo Mu nodded. Jianxing's eyes darkened. He said directly, this evil ghost has done many evil things. In order to prevent it from recovering, even if it is a remnant soul, we should destroy it as soon as possible. Lone Moon frowned and looked up at him. It is already a remnant soul. It can't recover anymore. If we continue to attack, it will only be destroyed. But Jianxing was stunned. His face was full of confusion, as if he didn't know how to handle it. Chapter 527. Lone Moon took out a Dharma talisman and sealed it on Shen Ying's hand. Immediately, the red light went into the talisman. Bring it back to the mountain and use spirit chi to cleanse the malevolent chi on it. Then send it to Samsara. With that said, he was about to keep the talisman, but after some thought, he stuffed it into Shen Ying's storage bag. The immortal chi on him was too thick. He was afraid that he might accidentally destroy the remnant soul. It was safer to put it on Shen Ying. Yes, Master. Jianxing nodded. He glanced at Shen Ying and said nothing. Suddenly the ground shook. Without the support of the evil ghost's ghost chi, the mountain started to become unstable. This place is going to collapse. Let's leave quickly. Lone Moon reminded. Wait. Jianxing turned around. Mushroom is here too. He pointed to the side. Indeed, Mushroom was lying there, seemingly unconscious. Lone Moon went up and picked her up. He looked around, but didn't see anyone else. He asked subconsciously, Where's your sister? Wasn't she captured? Jianxing's face paled. His eyes dimmed. He lowered his head with some sadness. Lone Moon understood instantly. It seemed that he was too late. He didn't know what to say. He sighed and didn't stay any longer. He set up an array and teleported them out. Before the four returned to the flat ground, they saw Fatty and the others rushing over. Master, have you dealt with that evil ghost? Fatty quickened his steps and walked over. But he saw the person he was carrying. Mushroom, what happened to her? Fatty hurriedly took her and examined her carefully. She was injured by that evil ghost and fainted. Lone Moon explained casually. That ghost is very good at absorbing souls. Her divine soul might be unstable. Fatty's expression changed. He hurriedly took Mushroom's hand and sent some immortal chi into her. Indeed, her primordial spirit was about to leave her body. He hurriedly cast a spell to help her stabilize her primordial spirit. Lone Moon turned to look at Jianxing behind him. He took out a recovery elixir and said, You're injured quite badly. Eat the elixir and rest here for a while. Thank you, Master. Jianxing took the elixir and ate it. Instantly, the wounds on his body began to heal. Instead, the other disciples looked behind them and seemed to realize that one person was missing. They couldn't help but ask, Uncle Master Jianxing, where's Miss Jilin? Why didn't she come back with you? Jianxing, who had just sat down, swayed a little. He clenched his fists by his side and said in a low voice after a while, I didn't make it in time. She was harmed by that evil ghost. Everyone's faces turned pale, and they couldn't help but sigh. Especially that disciple who spoke earlier. He didn't know what to do. Though Jilin had already been expelled from the sect, she was, after all, a partner who had once cultivated together. Though she had made a mistake along the way, it was not a crime worthy of death. After all, there was still a bit of friendship, especially since she was Jianxing's younger sister. The reason why Jianxing trained harder than anyone else was partly because of this sister. As long as he finished his studies and went down the mountain, they would be reunited one day. It was a pity that the world was unpredictable. The scene quieted down. No one knew how to comfort him. Lone Moon sighed as well. In a low voice he said, This time, regarding the matter of the evil ghost, it was your misjudgment. That's why so much trouble has occurred. In the beginning, Not only did you not recognize the cause of the trouble, you even shattered the dream realm in advance, causing the souls of the entire city to be unable to return. He glanced at these disciples. He had to admit that they were indeed inexperienced. If not for Fatty and I temporarily stabilizing those living souls, I'm afraid the citizens of the entire city would have been lost. Everyone lowered their heads in guilt. It was indeed their fault. They thought that something that could affect the entire city must be something like a large demon beast. Who would have thought that it was actually something like an evil ghost? That's why the entire city was almost harmed. After this incident, all of you need to know that no matter how powerful a cultivator is, he is not omnipotent. He can also fail miserably. You must not be arrogant and forget your original intentions. Originally, this matter was very easy to resolve. There was no need to wait until nightfall. All they had to do was find the ghost chi and destroy the nest. In addition, the yang chi was stronger in the day, so the evil ghost was easier to deal with than at night. But none of them noticed this. They didn't even notice the ghost chi in the city. Needless to say, he and Fatty were a little disappointed. Yes, exalted master. All the disciples replied in unison. Lone Moon didn't say much either. After all, everyone was injured. Previously, they were forcefully pulled into the dream realm. And then they broke the dream realm and were ejected out in advance. Other than Fatty, who was prepared in advance, all of them were more or less injured. He thought for a while and took out the other 2 pieces of paper asking for help. Then, he looked at everyone and made arrangements. Fatty, bring Mushroom and Jianxing back to the sect to recuperate first. Let the 3 of them deal with the next 2 places. Fatty looked at the heavily injured Jianxing, then at the unconscious Mushroom in his arms. He nodded. Yes, master. Jianxing also recovered some of his essence chi and stood up. Fatty then took out a Dharma artifact and flew away with the 2 of them. In the next few days, Lone Moon wasn't in a hurry. He brought the 3 disciples and dragged Shining, who wanted to slack off all the time, towards the remaining 2 places. If they encountered other matters along the way, they would settle them along the way. What was surprising was that along the way, they actually met other cultivators. But their cultivation levels were generally not high. Most of them were at the 1st or 2nd level of chi refinement. Lone Moon thought that the wealth he gave away earlier must have worked. Some people had already picked it up and started cultivating. They even met a cultivator who had just reached foundation establishment not long ago in a small town. He brought a group of people at the 1st or 2nd level of chi refinement and was about to deal with a 4th level demon beast. They even helped him along the way. After asking, they found out that the foundation establishment cultivator had picked up a book a few years ago and tried to cultivate it. He didn't expect it to really work, so he spread it out. Now, everyone in the town had started to cultivate it. Lone Moon expressed that he was very satisfied with the effect of giving away wealth. But without guidance, their cultivation was much more difficult. They searched towards the address on the paper. This time, they didn't encounter any major problems. It was just 2 low-level demon beasts that caused trouble. The 3 disciples easily settled them and didn't cause any more trouble. But the state of mind of the 3 was still very obviously different from before. That unique air of arrogance about them also lessened. When they encountered danger, they were also more cautious. When they finished all 3 missions and returned to the sect, it was already 3 months later. The moment they entered the door, a gust of wind with sword chi blew over instantly. Then it directly stopped in front of Shining. Master! A familiar voice sounded instantly, with a strong sense of joy and longing. Hey chef! Shining waved and greeted. You're back. There's supper again. Chapter 528. Master. Chef stared intently at the person in front of him. His mind and eyes were filled with her figure. The hands by his side loosened and tightened several times, as if he wanted to do something. Yet he was somewhat hesitant. Only his gaze became more focused, as if something soft was slowly flowing out from within. Lone Moon. He felt that it was the smell of dog food. All right, everyone go and rest. He waved at the 3 disciples behind him. Don't eat dog food here. The three of them bowed and followed Lone Moon away quickly. However, they couldn't help but turn back and look at the two people in front of the mountain gate. These disciples rarely went to the back hall. In addition, I Ching had left the sect for many years, so they didn't know his relationship with Shening. They couldn't help but feel confused. Did they hear wrongly? Just now, they heard Exalted Master I Ching call Exalted Master Shen Master, but they didn't look like master and disciple? Chef didn't move the whole time. Only when everyone left did he finally reach out and hug the person in front of him, so tightly that there wasn't a single gap. His warm breath, accompanied by his low voice, entered the bottom of her ears, faintly carrying a hint of grievance. Master, Master, sigh. Master. What? He just called her over and over again, as if he didn't get tired of it. However, his voice became lower and lower. Master, ha! Master. Are you making up the number of words? Shening tilted her head. Chef was stunned for a moment. Then he hugged her even tighter. Only then did he change the sentence, but the feeling of grievance was stronger. Master, I miss you. I miss you very much, very much. Shening paused for a while, then reached out and hugged him back. Her face was a little hot for no reason. Aya. Even an old fox would be tempted by such straightforward words. So she couldn't help but reply, me too. Chef was stunned for a moment. The corners of his mouth began to rise uncontrollably on his usually expressionless face. He lowered his head and buried it in the hair behind her, hugging her even tighter. He hugged like this for a long time until Xin Ying's hands were a little sore. Chef. Can you cook now? As the saying goes, one can't forget one's roots. Not even as a chef. With Chef back, Shening finally returned to her wonderful life of eating 5 meals a day. Perhaps because Father Neo limited her to 3 meals a day for too long, Shening actually felt a little full. Thus he went out for a stroll. He was going to the back of the mountain, but he ended up going to the front hall instead. For disciples were practicing their spells on the training grounds. Ever since they went out, the cultivation of the few disciples taught by the fatty had improved. One of them even directly broke through to the late-stage gold core. This was mainly because of the improvement of the state of mind. On the other hand, Jianxing's cultivation didn't improve much because he was heavily injured. It had been nurtured in the sect for a few months, and now it was back. He was still the one with the highest cultivation among the 4. What's more, he had learned all the sword techniques that Father Neo had taught him. He was already showing signs of developing sword intent. A few days ago, she heard Father Neo bragging in front of Chef, saying that he should be the first to leave the mountain among the 4 of them. With his nascent soul cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem for him to establish a sect. Father Neo already had the idea of letting him leave the mountain the last time they went out for experience. But he happened to be heavily injured and only came back to recuperate for a period of time. But it was only a few days away. After Lone Moon tested him again, he would let him go down the mountain. The first immortal cultivation sect in this plane was a sword cultivation sect. These few days, Father Neo would come to show off occasionally, as if he had finally fulfilled some long-cherished wish of his. Shening glanced at the few of them and didn't care. Just as she was about to slip back, she saw a familiar figure sitting beside the training grounds, staring seriously at the 4 of them. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked over. Mushroom, she called out, but the other party didn't respond. She could only walk a few steps closer and directly sit beside it. Does this look good? Huh? Mushroom got a fright and turned to look at her. After a while she smiled and said, Shening, why are you here? I just walked and arrived. It was definitely not because she wasn't here and she got lost. She replied casually. Why didn't you go to the back mountain to plant mushrooms? There was no one to lead the way. Huizhe said there's no need to plant mushrooms anymore, so I didn't plant them. Shening paused in the act of eating the pastries and turned to look at her. After a while, she slowly responded, Oh. She looked down at the little stool under her, and continued to ask, Are your injuries healed? She nodded hard. Huizhe helped me heal them, I'm fine now. Look. With that said, she even opened her hand for her to look, her face innocent. Shining tilted her head and held her hand and really looked at it. How long did it take to heal you? I'll be fine in a month. She smiled even more happily. I'll be fine before you guys come back. Oh. Xinying's eyes narrowed. She patted the pastry crumbs on her hand and opened the bag to take out a bright red fruit. She handed it over. Want some? Mushroom's eyes lit up. She nodded like a chick pecking at grains. Yes. With that said, she nodded and took it over. She held the fruit with both hands and started munching on it. She quickly finished the fruit and turned back to look at her with sparkling eyes. She said sweetly, "Thank you." Xinying's eyes darkened instantly. She retracted her lazy aura. Wrong answer. Ah. Mushroom was stunned. In the next moment, Xinying suddenly reached out and strangled her neck. You forgot to give me a card. Good person card. You. Before she could say anything, her whole body was lifted up by one of Yao Xi's hands. A terrifying aura instantly surged towards her. The other party's grip wasn't very tight, but she felt like she couldn't breathe. Boundless terror engulfed her. It was as if there was only one word left in her mind, death. Her voice resounded in his ears, enunciating every word. Speak. Where's Mushroom? What are you doing? Before the other party could answer, the practicing disciples had already surrounded them. The one in front was Jianxing, still holding a practice sword in his hand. What are you trying to do? Jianxing glanced at Xinying and looked worriedly at the person in her hand. There was even a hint of nervousness in his tone. Hurry and let go of Miss Mushroom. The other disciples all spoke up. Exalted Master, you. Exalted Master, Mushroom's injuries have just healed. If she really offended you in any way, please don't hold it against her. Yes, Exalted Master. Mushroom may be a demon, but she's a good one. Can you let her go first? Chapter 529. Xinying didn't even look at them, but her expression darkened. She said word by word. I'll ask again, where's the mushroom? All the disciples were stunned. What did she mean? Wasn't it the mushroom in her hand? Jianxing couldn't hold it in anymore, and attacked with his sword. Exalted Master, sorry. He raised his sword, and swung it at Xinying's hand that was holding the mushroom. A sword light was about to hit her wrist. Suddenly, another sword chi rushed over from the side and broke Jianxing's move, even sending him flying and crashing into the ground with a bang. In the next moment, I Ching's figure appeared beside Xinying. Obviously, he was the one who released that sword chi. Lo Mun's voice sounded from behind. What are you doing? Master, are you alright? I Ching scanned Xinying up and down with some panic. Not finding anything wrong, he then turned to look at the person on the ground. In an instant, overwhelming sword aura gushed out and swept towards the front. The entire martial arts arena began to crack inch by inch. Jianxing, who was on the ground, was pressed into the ground. All the meridians in his body ruptured, and he became a bloody man instantly. Even the other 3 disciples knelt down and vomited blood. Even their primordial spirits looked like they were about to be crushed. Chef, calm down. Lo Mun spoke in time, trying to stop the person who was about to lose his temper. But I Ching didn't move until Xinying also shouted, Chef! Only then did he retract the sword chi all over his body. Everyone then felt their bodies relax. In less than 2 breaths' time, they actually felt like they had escaped from death. Their faces were full of shock. What kind of powerful sword chi was this? Fatty, go and take a look. Lo Mun turned and instructed. Fatty hurriedly walked to the center of the martial arts arena and helped Jianxing up, who was like a bloody man on the ground. He stuffed an elixir into his mouth and used immortal chi to repair his meridians. If he had been 1 step later, he would have become a cripple. Senior brother. Only then did Jianxing open his eyes and take a look at Fatty. He finally recovered. I Ching looked over again, the sword chi on his body about to burst out at any moment. Chef, wait a moment. As clearly first. Lo Mun hurriedly pulled her back and looked at Jianxing over there. His expression darkened. What exactly happened? How could you point your sword at Xinying? Jianxing pressed a hand to his chest and looked at Xinying. There was some anxiety on his face. After a while he said, She wants to kill Mushroom. Lone Moon turned back and realized that Shening was carrying a person in her hand. It was Mushroom, but at this moment, his face was pale, as if he was about to be strangled to death. Mushroom. Fatty panicked. He dropped Jianxing and walked over quickly. Shening? Lone Moon paused. What was going on? Didn't she like mushrooms? The kind where they could share the fruits. Shening had no intention of replying at all. She continued to look at the man in her hand. Where did you hide the mushroom? What do you mean? What hidden? Lone Moon stopped mid-sentence, suddenly understanding something. His eyes widened. He conjured a seal and slapped Mushroom's forehead. A moment later, a translucent soul popped out of the mushroom's body. It was dressed exactly the same, but its face was completely different. Furthermore, it looked somewhat familiar. Jilin! The three disciples exclaimed in unison. Even Lone Moon was stunned. When did Mushroom get possessed? They did not see any signs of possession on her body. She's Jilin. Where's Mushroom? Fatty was also confused. He was the one who treated Mushroom's injuries, but he did not notice anything different. Jilin panicked. She turned and wanted to float away, but Shening let go of Mushroom's body and grabbed her translucent soul again. She did not even change her hand. Still not going to talk? Shening tightened her grip. Jilin's translucent soul started to crack like broken glass. Ah! Jilin felt an indescribable pain. She let out a shrill scream. No, don't. It's already been eaten by the evil ghost. I didn't harm her. Don't kill me. No, Jianxing shouted. She didn't do it on purpose. Don't hurt her. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He turned to look at Jianxing. You knew from the beginning. Jianxing paled. A moment later, he said in a low voice. That day, the evil ghost captured both of them at the same time. By the time I arrived, Mushroom's soul had already been eaten by the evil ghost. He looked up at Jilin and Shenying's hand and continued. After I rescued Little Lin's soul, I realized that her body had already been eaten by the evil ghost. I could only attach her to Mushroom's body. He struggled to kneel on the ground. He looked at Lone Moon and said, Master, I was anxious to save her. I was also afraid that you would misunderstand Jilin. That's why I did not tell you the truth. Please forgive me, Master. Lone Moon frowned. Possession was a heinous crime, but given the circumstances, he really did not have much of a choice. Otherwise, he might not have been able to save either of them. Even he could not say that what he did was wrong. But, is that so? Shening suddenly spoke. Her gaze turned cold. Mushroom is really dead. Everyone was stunned. What did she mean? Shening suddenly raised her other hand and reached toward Jilin's head. What are you trying to do? Stop. Jilin was shocked. No matter how hard she tried, she could not escape from Shenying's palm. In the next moment, the same intense pain attacked her again. This time, it was more intense than before. Only last time, it was the pain of her soul being torn apart. Shenying was indeed tearing her soul apart. She grabbed one side of her soul and pulled it apart. Ah! Help save me, brother! Little Lin! Jianxing tried to crawl over, but he fell to the ground weakly. He could only glare at Shening and watch as she forcefully split Jilin's soul into two. The originally translucent soul became even more translucent, but it was now divided into two figures. One still looked like Jilin, while the other, Mushroom. Fatty cried out in shock. It was not just the few people present. Even Jianxing, who was on the ground, had a look of disbelief on his face. How could this be? Why was Mushroom's soul in Jilin's body? Fatty stepped forward and took the translucent soul from Shenying's hands. He called out a few times, but there was no response at all. How could this be? She lost her primary soul. This is only one of her souls. Lone Moon took a look and saw the problem. A soul that had lost its primary soul had no sentience. That was why there was no response. Chapter 530. Lone Moon turned to look at Jilin, who was still screaming in Shenying's hands. You swallowed Mushroom's soul on purpose. That soul of Mushroom might have contained her memories, which was why she could hide it for so long, even fooling Fatty. This was also why they could not tell that Mushroom had already been possessed. Mushroom wasn't devoured by the evil spirit on its own. You did it, didn't you? No. I don't know. Jilin kept struggling. Perhaps it was because of the pain of her soul being split, or the guilt of being discovered. She started to speak without thinking. I just wanted to come back. Everyone's faces darkened. They looked at Jilin in disbelief. If she had done this on purpose, then some things were not just coincidences, including the fact that her soul had just left her body, and she had just lost her soul. They could not help but think back to what they had experienced. They could not help but guess that she had always been at the foot of the mountain. Suhong City was not far from here. Perhaps she had. At that moment, all the disciples felt a chill down their spines. Even Jianxing's face was pale. He looked shocked. Longmun's eyes darkened. He raised his hand and dissipated the life force around Jilin's soul. Her originally transparent soul began to reveal traces of black. That was ghost chi. She was no longer a living soul. She was a real ghost. He set up a reincarnation array. He looked at Shining and said, "Send her into samsara." Shining frowned. She tightened her grip. With a few cracking sounds, a few more cracks appeared on the soul. Then she threw it into the reincarnation array. Jilin swallowed Mushroom's soul. Naturally, she had to give up one of her own. Now that Shining had taken it out, her soul was no longer complete. Coupled with those cracks, even if she reincarnated, she would not be a complete person. There would always be something missing. Longmun sighed. He turned to look at Mushroom beside Fatty. She was even worse off. She only had one soul left. He did not know how long she would have to stay in the river of forgetfulness for a chance to reincarnate. After all, even her primary soul had been swallowed by that evil ghost. Wait. Evil ghost? Longmun paused. Suddenly he recalled something. Shining, where's the remnant soul from the evil ghost? Shining stared blankly at him. A moment later she said, "Oh, it's here." As he spoke, he took out the talisman from the bag and tore it to release the remnant soul. A red light floated out from the talisman and formed a red ball. It carried an eerie ghost chi. After a few months, the remnant soul in Xinying's body had actually grown a little bigger. Strangely, it did not take the opportunity to escape. Instead, it floated obediently in front of Shining. Longmun took a closer look and realized that the remnant soul was filled with the demonic aura of an evil ghost. There was no aura of a mushroom at all. Could he have guessed wrongly? Just as he was thinking, Shining handed the red light to I Ching. "Chef fire." "Yes, master." I Ching turned his palm. Without any hesitation, a true phoenix fire appeared and surrounded the remnant soul. In the blink of an eye, the baleful chi and ghostly chi all disappeared. Only then did I Ching retract his hand. The originally fiery remnant soul slowly turned into an ordinary white transparent state, and slowly began to transform into a human form. Mushroom. Fatty was delighted. He was the first to recognize it. He did not expect that the remnant soul of the evil ghost was wrapped around Mushroom's main soul. Longmun heaved a sigh of relief. No wonder after that evil ghost died, this remnant soul flew towards Shining. It was not trying to escape, but Mushroom was asking Shining for help. He directly combined Mushroom's main soul and the remnant soul in Fatty's hand into one, and put them back into her body. Indeed, in a short while, Mushroom opened her eyes and looked at Fatty with some confusion. "Huize." Suddenly, she seemed to recall something. Her face was full of fear. "Jilin, she wanted to eat me, Huize." It's all right. Fatty comforted her and transferred a bit of immortal chi over. Only then did she calm down. She seemed to be exhausted. Slowly, she closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Although her main soul had returned, she had lost 2 souls and 6 spirits after all. It was already not easy for her to be awake for a short while. But as long as the main soul was there, the other spirits could be nurtured back. Longmun took a look at Mushroom, then turned to look at Jianxing. His expression darkened instantly. Only then did he walk over. Master, Jianxing's expression was complicated. He seemed to have not recovered from what had just happened. He was at a loss and flustered. "Jianxing, do you know your mistake?" Lone Moon looked at the person in front of him, his eyes full of disappointment. But Jian Xing was the disciple that he had taught the most diligently in all these years. Although he was not the most outstanding, he had the highest expectations of Jian Xing. Unfortunately, the higher the expectations, the greater the disappointment. Master. The panic in Jian Xing's eyes deepened. Please forgive me, Master. I did not know that little Lin would do such a thing. Seeing that, the other 3 disciples also knelt down and began to plead for mercy. Exalted Master, although Uncle Master Jian Xing is Ji Lin's brother and sister, it is understandable that he did not know the inside story. Yes, Exalted Master. He who does not know is not guilty. Ji Lin was not that kind of person in the first place. No one would have thought that she would purposely take over someone else's body. Exalted Master. Although he was negligent, please forgive him this time on account of the fact that he was wholeheartedly dealing with the evil ghost. Even Fatty frowned and added, Master, since Ji Lin has been executed, justice has been served to Mushroom. After all, Jian Xing was the only sword cultivator that Master had put in so much effort to teach. And he was about to leave the mountain to establish his own sect. He was angry about what happened to Mushroom, but he could not bear to see Master's years of hard work go to waste. Lone Moon's expression darkened even more. The hand by his side tightened its grip on his fan. Taking a deep breath, he turned to look at Shen Ying and Chef. What do you think? Chef did not speak. The anger on his face had not dissipated. It was obvious that Mushroom and whatnot should be put aside. Just based on what he did to Shen Ying just now, this person was already a dead man in his eyes. Shen Ying, on the other hand, raised her head and looked straight at Lone Moon. After a while she said, You can decide. You don't have to listen to other people's opinions, including mine. Lone Moon was stunned for a moment. Then his expression softened a little. He continued to turn to look at the person on the ground, and asked word by word. Jian Xing, apart from helping Ji Lin to take over your body, do you really know nothing about her plot? Jian Xing paused. After a while he still nodded and said, I really don't know. Jian Xing. Lone Moon took a deep breath, and then let out a long sigh, as if he had finally let go of something. You disappoint me too much. Jian Xing panicked. Suddenly, he had the illusion that he was about to lose something. Frantically, he reached out to the corner of Lone Moon's robe. Master. Chapter 531. But Lone Moon took a step back and dodged his hand. Now that things have come to this, you still don't know how to repent? You said you didn't know Ji Lin's plot at all. But why did you have to kill that evil ghost back then, even to the last remnant of her soul? That day when Shen Ying caught that remnant soul, he had suggested to completely destroy that remnant soul. His face paled, and he couldn't speak. As a cultivator, you should know that even if it's an evil ghost, purifying it and sending it into samsara is the best solution. But you didn't do that. Lone Moon said in a low voice, directly exposing his thoughts. With your cultivation, a half-step ghost king can't hurt you like that. Unless that evil ghost was forced into a corner by you and had no choice but to make you pay at the cost of her soul dissipating. He couldn't speak, but his body started to tremble. You said you didn't know about Ji Lin's plot beforehand. I believe you. But after you helped Mushroom resurrect her soul, you should have long discovered the truth, but you still chose to kill that evil ghost. Lone Moon looked straight at him. Did you really do this just to get rid of the evil, and not to help Ji Lin hide the truth? Jian Xing's body swayed, and he directly sat on the ground, his face ashen. Wrong is wrong. If you had taken the initiative to confess from the start, I might have let you off. Lone Moon closed his eyes and said with some fatigue, Jian Xing, you really disappoint me. Master. He suddenly raised his head and looked at him with a complicated expression. Then teach me, what should I do? She's my sister, my only family. If I don't help her, am I supposed to watch her become a wandering ghost? Then you can bear to let Mushroom's soul dissipate. Jian Xing's expression became more and more stubborn, as if he was staking it all on one throw. He smiled and said, Everyone has their own selfish motives. I chose to save my own sister, is that wrong? There's no such thing as right or wrong in this world. It's just different standpoints. Besides, wasn't Master the reason why little Lin became like this? What did you say? Lone Moon frowned. Isn't that so? Jianxing said with a mocking smile. You took her into the immortal sect, and let her see a wider world. But then you abandoned her. How could she not be resentful? Everything she did was for the sake of returning. What wrong did she do? Lone Moon's frown deepened. Who in this world is completely selfless? However, the more he spoke, the more energetic he became, as if he wanted to pour out all the words he had suppressed for so many years. Even if you're Master, you're still the same. Do you think that helping the wicked is purely selfish? Lone Moon laughed coldly, and the last bit of pity in his heart disappeared. Isn't that so? Lone Moon thought that Lone Moon was going to deny it. He pointed at Shining and said, Isn't she your selfish motive? She's clearly useless. She can't even abstain from eating. But you protect her all the time and favor her. You can't tolerate others talking bad about her. Just because Jilin offended you, you expelled them from the sect. She can eat spirit fruits that are 100 years old. She can take spirit herbs that are 10,000 years old. And she can waste the inner cores of high-level demonic beasts as she pleases. Yet, he wasn't willing to give a single cent to his sect's heavily injured disciple. Why? Isn't it because of Master's selfishness? I Ching couldn't take it anymore. He even summoned his sword, but Shining stopped him. Fatty's face was black, and Father Nio's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Shining, on the other hand, looked like she didn't care. She was still chewing on her fruit leisurely, as if the person being accused was not her. In order not to wake her up from her sleep, you abandoned the evil ghost and put the whole city in danger. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. The way he looked at Shining was like knives were about to fly out. It was he who gave Jilin the chance to take over her body. If I'm wrong, you guys are the same. Are you done? Lone Moon's expression was frighteningly calm. There was even a faint smile on his face. Is this what you really think? You always thought that Jilin was expelled from the sect because I was selfish and sided with Shining? Yes. He nodded directly. If not for Master favoring her, based on her capabilities. How much do you know about her capabilities? Have you experienced it? Lone Moon interrupted him directly. Jianxing was stunned, as if he didn't understand what he meant. But Lone Moon's smile deepened and became colder. Then let me tell you. Me, Chef, Fatty, and even everyone here combined would not be enough to deal with Shining with one hand. He scanned everyone present and said word by word. Not only that, if she wanted the survival of the entire human continent, to her, it would only be a matter of a single thought. Do you still think that's just my selfish motives? There was a sudden silence. Even Jianxing's expression was one of disbelief. I didn't wake her up from her sleep, because none of you could bear the consequences of waking her up. Isn't it because her cultivation level is low, that she never bickers with you? That's because your levels are too low. You can't reach her. Do you really think that her title as sect master is undeserved? No, impossible. Jianxing looked at Shining, still in disbelief. What do spirit fruits, spirit plants, and inner cores have to do with you? Don't find excuses for your greed. You just think that because Mushroom is a little demon, it's more important for Jilin to be alive? You think that because Shining is immortal, her resources should be distributed to others? At the end of the day, your so-called reason is just to bully the kind and fear the evil. Jianxing's face paled again. He looked lost, as if something had been broken. Jianxing. Lone Moon looked at him seriously and said, It's true that everyone has selfish motives. You chose Jilin and gave up on Mushroom. That's not entirely wrong. There is indeed no right or wrong in this world, but there is definitely evil and good in this world. He raised his hand and conjured a seal. My invincible sect does not need disciples with evil intentions. No, Master. Great fear flashed across Jianxing's face. He turned and crawled towards Lone Moon. But Lone Moon did not stop. He conjured a seal and destroyed Jianxing's dantian. In the next moment, all the spirit qi in his body faded. Even the nascent soul in his sea of consciousness dissipated. His youthful appearance also changed visibly. He became about 40 years old. Jianxing looked at his own hands, his eyes full of fear. Master. He looked up and wanted to beg for something. But Lone Moon pointed at his glabella. The experience of going up the mountain to learn Tao is the main cause of Jilin's change. Then erase this memory as well. Jianxing's eyes widened. Before he could resist, he felt a wave of dizziness and fainted. Chapter 532. Send him down the mountain. Lone Moon turned to look at the remaining 3 disciples. Yes, exalted master. The 3 of them then went forward to lift the person on the ground, turned around and retreated. Fatty carried Mushroom as well. Master, I'll bring Mushroom down first. Yes. Lone Moon responded, but his eyes were still looking at the messy martial arts arena. His expression was dark, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, the surrounding air became heavy. Shenning exchanged a look with Chef, then took 2 steps forward and stood beside him. Shenning even took out a plate of pastries and handed it over. Father Neo, want some? I'm not eating. Oh. Shenning stuffed it into her mouth. For a moment, the entire arena fell silent again. Only the sound of Shen-Ying chewing on the pastries could be heard. After a long time, seeing that the pastries were almost finished, Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Finally, he could not help but say, "Can't the 2 of you comfort me?" Father Neo, what do you want to hear? Shen-Ying asked. How would I know? Can't you see that I'm in low spirits? All right. Shen-Ying sighed. Father Neo, you have so many students. There are bound to be 1 or 2 who can't graduate. Relax. Master is right, Chef replied casually. You've taught so many people. There's bound to be a group of people who can't become sword cultivators. You call this comforting? This was more like throwing stones into a well. If Father Neo really can't bear to let her go, it's not a big deal to call her back. There were indeed too few people who were born with a sword embodiment. Besides, although Jianxing made a mistake when it came to his sister, he didn't have any other shortcomings. It wasn't like he couldn't change it. No, he frowned and said, even if there is a shortage of sword cultivators in this world, I cannot tolerate someone with such evil intentions like him going there to teach. But everyone has their flaws. I know. Lone Moon turned to Shen-Ying and said, what I can't forgive is not that he always protects his sister, but that he has evil intentions towards innocent people. What did Mushroom do wrong to have to pay the price for Jilin's selfishness? Jianxing clearly knew that Mushroom was innocent, but he still helped Jilin take over her body, and helped her plan her retreat. If he had said it at that time, it was not as if there was no other way. But he didn't. If he treats the people he knows like this, then what will he do when he sets up his own sect, and no one restrains him? Lone Moon sighed. Of course I know that no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. I've taught him for so many years, and I was just about to finish my apprenticeship, but because of this matter, I failed. This matter concerned the entire human race, so it was indeed not worth it. However, I cannot ignore the truth just because of his importance to the human race. If I let him go, then who will let Mushroom go? Who could she talk to about her reasoning? If everyone gave up the truth for the sake of greater benefits, then the world would be in chaos. This world is too scary. I just feel that there is no right or wrong in the world, and it is difficult to distinguish between good and evil, but at least there is fairness, right? He said this so seriously that even I Ching looked at him with some surprise, as if it was the first time he met him. Was this still the profiteer from before? Shen-Ying suddenly laughed out loud. She patted his shoulder with a rare look of sincerity. Father Neo, good job. Why did she suddenly praise him so seriously? You did it. What? Lone Moon was stunned. In the next moment, he heard a rumble of thunder from above, and the sky suddenly darkened. Looking up, he saw that the sky was filled with layers of thunder clouds covering the entire sky. It was not just nearby. He subconsciously released his divine perception to scan, and found that the entire human world, no, it should be said that the entire plain was like this. Thick thunder clouds appeared in every part of the sky of the entire plain. It was clearly a clear sky just now, but now it was all pitch black with thunder clouds. Only the clouds occasionally revealed the light of various colors of lightning. The thunder clouds were extremely thick. They looked like tribulation clouds, but they were different. Especially above the clouds, there seemed to be something huge forming, like a huge invisible net covering the entire plain. That thing was familiar yet strange, invisible and yet everywhere. Lone Moon even felt that it was close to him. This was nomological power. Before Lone Moon could react, the transmission amulet beside him suddenly lit up. Hong Meng's excited voice sounded from it. Lord, did you see it? It's the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao is born. Look at the sky. It's the heavenly Tao finally born. That's great. Sob. This world finally has a heavenly Tao. Ha 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 wah. Hong Meng cried and laughed at the same time. He was so excited that if he was not careful, he would drill through the transmission amulet. His voice was so noisy that it gave Lone Moon a headache. Lone Moon was also a little confused. He looked up at the sky, and once again sensed the layers of tribulation clouds above. That newly born nomological power. Almost instantly, the nomological power above responded to him, as if it was very welcoming of his visit, with a hint of excitement. It was really the heavenly Tao. Why was it suddenly born? They didn't do anything? Something like the heavenly Tao. Shouldn't it be like a constitution? Something that needed to be discussed one by one? After a period of practice, could it finally be confirmed? Shen Ying, the manager, hadn't done anything yet. Could it be that he had overlooked something? Let him recall what happened just now. It seemed that he only said one sentence. Fairness? He only felt his heart skip a beat. His hand tightened, and he directly crushed the transmission amulet in his hand. Hong Meng's ghostly cries finally stopped. Only then did he turn to look at the master and disciple beside him. His expression darkened, like a storm was approaching. The two of you, you'd better tell me honestly. What exactly is going on? The two of them stiffened at the same time, and turned their eyes, one to the left and the other to the right. What is Father Nyo saying? I don't understand at all. Yes, Father Nyo, how can we tell you? Pretend. Continue pretending. Lone Moon pointed to the sky. This heavenly Tao was born because of me, right? I'm just a King assistant. Not even from this plane. Where did I get such great authority? Congratulations, Father Nyo. Shen Ying turned and took out a piece of paper and stuffed it into his hand, as if she had prepared it for a long time. You've been promoted. From now on, you're the manager of this plane. Clap. With that said, the master and disciple clapped their hands together and let out a series of awkward applause. He subconsciously looked down, only to see that there was an additional A4 paper in his hand. On it was a row of eye-catching big words. Plane transfer certificate. Lone Moon. Mother ****. Chapter 533. 3 hours later. So, the heavenly Tao was really born because of me? Lone Moon tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart, and said word by word through gritted teeth. You're the manager. Your thoughts are the rules of heaven and earth. I Ching nodded. You already knew? Lone Moon looked at Chef. His eyes were like ice knives stabbing at him. Chef faltered. Should he say that he knew or didn't know? Which means? Lone Moon's hand tightened. His fan cracked and almost broke. You've been so obedient recently, because you're working together to trick me into getting on board. Father Nyo, don't worry about such details. Getting promoted is a good thing. Details my ass. How is this a detail? This kind of job with no salary, no insurance, no rest 24 hours a day. How is it a good thing? That made so much sense that she had nothing to say. One plane is enough to worry me. Do you think it's fun to throw another one over? He turned to glare at Shen Ying. And Shen Ying, you're just freaking lazy. You're all prodigals who depend on me. How dare you add more work for me? As expected, he still flipped out. Father Nyo was so scary. The two of them hugged each other and trembled. You two still dare to show off your affection. Shen Ying. I Ching. They immediately separated and hugged themselves. They lowered their heads and tried to reduce their presence. Anyway, I'm not taking this plane. You can throw it to whoever you want. Lone Moon paced back and forth angrily. If you can't do it, return it to Hong Meng. I'm already busy enough with the previous plane. Who wants to take this rubbish? Then what if we don't care about the previous one? Shenning asked weakly. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. What do you mean? Shenning was about to explain when a rumble of thunder came from the sky. The three of them stilled. The lightning clouds that had just dissipated began to gather again. But this time, they only gathered on the mountain top, and not the entire plain. And looking at the thick pressure of heaven and earth in the clouds, this was tribulation lightning. Master. Fatty hurried over and looked at the three of them. It's the sect's disciples. They're going through the tribulation. It's the golden core lightning tribulation. So fast. Lone Moon paused for a moment. He did not expect that the first lightning tribulation would be here when the heavenly Tao had just been formed. Let's go take a look. The situation was urgent, so he had to go and take a look. When he reached the door, he paused and turned back to glare at the two. You two wait for me. This isn't over yet. With that he walked out. Shenning, I Ching. After a long while. Master, how much food allowance do you think will be deducted this time? 3 months. Why did he feel that 3 years was a possibility? He wondered if he had saved enough food for the past few years. Lone Moon had just arrived at the front hall when he saw the 3 disciples standing on the platform in the middle with blank expressions on their faces. They looked at the spirit chi around them that had suddenly started to increase explosively, as if they had not reacted at all. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and meditate, the heavenly lightning is coming. Lone Moon reminded them loudly. The 3 of them were stunned. Only then did they sit down cross-legged. However, they still looked confused, completely unaware of the danger they were in. Lone Moon could not help but speak again. This is your tribulation, and also a test for you by the heavenly Tao. After Golden Core, every major realm, the heavens will send down a lightning punishment. You have to use all your strength to deal with it. Only then can you survive this tribulation. You cannot avoid it, you cannot bear it, and even your life will be in danger. If you succeed, your cultivation will increase. If you fail, you will die. Only then can you obtain the approval of the heavenly Tao. Understand? A trace of panic flashed across the 3's eyes, but they immediately calmed down and replied in unison. Yes, exalted master. With that said, they began to prepare 120% of their energy. They mobilized their spirit chi and got into a defensive posture. The lightning tribulation in the sky was almost ready, and the surrounding spirit chi was getting thicker. Suddenly, 3 white lightning bolts, carrying with them the power of heaven and earth, broke through the clouds at the same time, heading straight for the 3 people below. Seeing that it was about to strike, Lone Moon also raised his head to look at the sky, intending to observe the first lightning tribulation of this plane. Suddenly, the lightning in the sky paused, as if it had come to an emergency stop midway, and stopped with a click in the air. The white electric head seemed to have come to life. Suddenly, it bent in Lone Moon's direction, then turned back to look at the 3 people on the ground. Then it looked at Lone Moon, then looked at the 3 people on the ground. It bent back and forth a few times, as if hesitating whether to strike or not. Even the nomological power around it seemed to be at a loss, as if asking for his opinion. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. The heavenly Tao really was born because of him. After a while he gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Do your thing. Why are you looking at me?" Only then did the heavenly lightning strike the 3 people's heads. The first was the mental demon tribulation. The 3 of them instantly fell into the mental demon tribulation, and their expressions changed. But after all, it was only the golden core lightning tribulation, and they quickly regained their senses. Then, the second and third lightning fell one after another. Every lightning bolt struck the people below with unerring accuracy. Not only did it not deviate, but even the extent of each lightning bolt in the sky was exactly the same. Even the pressure in each lightning bolt, and the amount of electricity, were not the slightest bit different. Lone Moon faintly felt that he was watching a standard demonstration of the lightning tribulation, the kind that a leader would perform while inspecting. Lone Moon's expression became darker and darker. If not for the fact that the heavenly lightning had not finished striking, he really wanted to go back and beat the asses of these two people. The lightning tribulation struck very quickly. A total of 81 lightning bolts struck, not one more or one less. The lightning tribulation in the sky dissipated completely, leaving only the surrounding rich spirit chi, and a trace of the nomological power of heaven and earth revolving around Lone Moon, as if waiting for the leader to speak, not daring to disperse. Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart. Only then did he reply, "All right." That trace of nomological power dissipated. Faintly, there was the illusion that the other party heaved a huge sigh of relief. Fortunately, the leader was satisfied. Although the three people who were going through the lightning tribulation were all injured to varying degrees, the spirit chi in their bodies had become more condensed. This was the benefit of the heavenly lightning. As long as they passed the test of the lightning tribulation, the heavenly Tao was still kind to cultivators. Fatty checked their injuries one by one and found that none of them were particularly serious. Instead, their cultivation levels were showing signs of improvement. This could be considered as the heavenly Tao's compensation to them. After all, they had already formed their course for a long time. Before the heavenly Tao was formed, the lightning tribulation was considered late. They could have just let it go, but now that they were already under the nomological power, the lightning tribulation still descended. Chapter 534. Fatty distributed some recovery elixirs to his disciples, then gave them some pointers on their cultivation, and told them about the heavenly tribulation in detail. Perhaps because they had personally experienced the pressure of heaven and earth, there was a hint of respect in their eyes. Due to their years of cultivation, they had unconsciously developed a sense of superiority, which unexpectedly dissipated a lot. If these three maintained their original intentions, it was not impossible for them to become great grandmasters in the future. Lone Moon nodded in satisfaction, then let Fatty bring them away. Thinking that there were still two little bastards waiting to be dealt with in the rear hall, he walked back, only to find that Hong Meng, who should have been thousands of miles away, had appeared out of nowhere and was sitting inside. "Why are you here?" Lone Moon glared at him. "You left Rabbit there alone?" "Don't worry, Lord Lone Moon. Brother Rabbit is knowledgeable and eloquent, and most of those divine beings are already meditating. It will be fine alone." Hong Meng laughed. "What's more, I have nothing to do in Purple Night Palace. I'm really bored. The only thing I can help is at most to pass Brother Rabbit some carrots." "We've already done your work, of course you're fine." Lone Moon looked at him disdainfully. "I really don't know how you managed to become an ancient god. No wonder the plane was destroyed by you guys previously." Hong Meng felt like he was about to spit out blood. How could he not stab him? He felt so wronged he wanted to cry, but he had to maintain a smile. "You're right, Lord. Isn't this all thanks to your help? I'm here specially to thank you for rebuilding the heavenly Tao." Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and scanned him from head to toe. "Do all your planes come empty-handed to express their gratitude?" Hong Meng stiffened, faintly feeling another stab in his chest. He had even moved his house and mountain over. What else did he want? What happened to being friends? This stab after stab was so heart-wrenching. "You came all the way here just for this?" Lone Moon glanced at him suspiciously. Hong Meng rubbed his hands, his eyes drifting, and after a while he said tentatively, "It's like this. Now that the heavenly Tao has been established, the plane crisis can be considered completely resolved, but the different races living together is after all not conducive to the plane's development. So it's better to treat them separately. It's a pity that my magic power is weak. Moreover, I heard that the heavenly Tao was born because of Lord Lone Moon. So could you please help?" Scram! Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon slammed the word into his face. Hong Meng was stunned. Why wasn't he playing by the rules? If you want to divide the world, do it yourself. I don't want to care about the matters of your plane. You don't even pay me a salary. Why should I indulge you? Father Neo. I Ching could not help but take a step forward as well. He pulled Lone Moon over and whispered, "You're the manager of this plane now. If you don't do anything about it, This plane will collapse. While Hong Meng did not know about this, it was good to make him work for him. Haha. Lone Moon smacked him in the face. You two master and disciple tricked me into accepting it, and now you're blaming me? I Ching. Master, I've tried my best. Shining could only carry the plate of pastries and move over, squeezing into their private chat circle. Father Niu, this matter is already settled. What's more, this company is already yours. You're already the boss. Naturally, there won't be any salary. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. His eyes were filled with the light of wisdom that saw through all the traps. You mean I don't have to work for you anymore? Oh, that's not it. He still had to continue raising his daughter. Then what the hell are you talking about? At the end of the day, he was still the one who worked himself to death. It was bad enough that he had to raise two little rascals in the past. Now even Hong Meng was involved. What the hell was this? He even brought along the burden of an entire plane. Father Niu, who had changed his business model, was too difficult to fool. They suddenly understood the feelings of those who had been tricked by him before. Sigh. Shining sighed. Suddenly, she turned and stuffed the plate of pastries in her hands to Chef. She took a deep breath and reached out to grab his sleeve. Something on her body instantly dispersed. She blinked her eyes and bit her lower lip, revealing a crying expression. Her voice instantly rose and said with a hint of cuteness, Father Niu, are you really not going to take it? Of course not. Lone Moon subconsciously turned back. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were instantly stuck in his throat. He vaguely felt as if his heart had been hit by a huge object called cuteness. He could not control his hands. He wanted to throw away his integrity. After trembling for a long time, he barely managed to control himself. Shit. Don't think of using the same method that you used on Xinjing to deal with me. He was someone who had been cuter than Little Ing after all. He could bear it. His head held up. He could not nod. All right. Shining once again released all the laziness in her body. She kept Shin Meng back. If you really don't want to take it, then forget it. Master. I Ching was also shocked by Xin Ying's sudden action just now. He immediately sobered up and spoke up a little anxiously. Forget it, Chef. Don't force Father Niu. Shining gave a long sigh. She tilted her head and muttered in a seemingly unintentional manner. But I've already transferred this plane. I have to find someone to take it. It's not easy to get the plane's recognition. Other than Father Niu, I can't find anyone else. Why don't I just throw it to my big sister to manage? This place is also close to my side. She can still drop by from time to time. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces turned pale. They only felt a chill coming from the bottom of their hearts. They hurriedly interrupted her. All right, I'll take it. You would take it, all right? Don't invite that big demon king over. Really? Really? Did he have any other choice? You're not forcing it? Not forcing it. It would be strange. But forcing it was still better than being beaten to death by the big demon king. He gritted his teeth. All right, Father Niu. Thank you for your hard work, Father Niu. Father Niu's promotion was thus happily decided. Shining patted his shoulder. She took the pastries from Chef's hands. Want some? Get lost. All right. Only then did the three of them reach a consensus. They ended the meeting and turned to return to the table. Yet they found Hong Meng looking at Shen Ying with a dazed expression. Although he couldn't hear anything, he obviously saw something. He looked like he was swept by the Mo light wave tail. What was that just now? He suddenly felt his heart beating so fast. What was with this urge to rub something? His eyes subconsciously turned to look at Shen Ying. What are you looking at? The two protective friends and relatives shouted back fiercely at the same time. What has it got to do with you? No. I don't know what's going on either. Holy shit, you dare to have a nosebleed. Master, can I kill him? Shen Ying. Chapter 535. When the plane first opened, the three realms were all connected. Only when the heavenly Tao was established and the rules were formed, did the three realms begin to be divided. And what Lone Moon needed to do now was to divide the realms. Once the three realms were truly separated, the problem of the human race that Hong Meng was worried about would no longer exist. In addition to what Lone Moon had done previously, The teachings had already been passed down. Although the human race still could not defeat the divine race, they were no longer completely defenseless. Hong Meng explained to them the problem of how to divide the realms. If it was just a piece of land, it was naturally simple. It was like a flat piece of paper, to be divided into 3 layers. One could just tear it apart. But dividing the realms was different. Although the 3 realms were separated, they were connected to each other. Otherwise, it would not be considered a complete plane. Like the previous plane, although the boundaries between the realms could not be crossed, there was still a realm gate connecting them. Then what do we do? Lone Moon frowned. They had to separate and connect them. Were they going to fold the plane? But wouldn't that crush the lower layers? This is very easy to solve. Hong Meng hurriedly said with some flattery. You just have to set up the original source purple gas, which is this plane's river of forgetfulness. But because there is no Mengpa here, I still have to trouble you to personally set up the river of forgetfulness. How to set it up? That ball of original source purple gas back then had now grown into a river and covered the entire plane. You just have to go to the center of the purple gas. Hong Meng hurriedly said, as long as you can help me and let it return to its original state, when the division of the 3 realms is complete, then it will be restored. Lone Moon pressed his forehead and sighed. There was no other way. The mess had already been taken care of. So he gave a few instructions to Fatty and pulled the 2 master and disciple along. Don't think of slacking off either. Then he set off with Hong Meng. The place that Hong Meng mentioned was actually from his Purple Night Palace. Alright, there was only Purple Night Plain left now. It was not very far. After all, it was the center of the entire plane. Hong Meng had gone through so much to revive his plane. Naturally, he was especially nervous about the original source purple gas, and did not dare to live too far away. He had even used up half of his divine power to completely isolate the area to prevent ignorant gods from accidentally breaking in and causing damage. This was also part of the reason why he couldn't defeat the 12 gods. Along the way, they encountered countless traps and arrays. Some of them even Hong Meng himself forgot about them, and were almost trapped outside. It took him a lot of effort to break the array and enter. Lone Moon strongly condemned his unreliable behavior, and then scolded him for 2 hours. With great difficulty, they finally reached the center of the origin purple gas. It was an unremarkable wasteland. It was so desolate that there was not even half a plant, let alone other creatures. However, in the eyes of these people, it was completely different. It was an endless expanse of purple, like a purple ocean, floating in the air, reflecting the entire world in purple. Connecting the purple sea were rivers of varying width and width. They extended in all directions and reached every corner of the plain. Lone Moon was shocked by the scene in front of him for a moment. He did not expect that the original source, which was the size of a well at that time, had become so big now. It seemed that Hong Meng had really been trying his best to protect it all these years. Lord, this is the center of the original source, Hong Meng said with a little pride. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. King want us to keep such a big ocean? Are you kidding me? How can I keep it? Of course we can't keep it directly, Hong Meng explained. The original source now is different from before. To completely control it, we may have to go closer to the center. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go, Lone Moon urged. Alright. Hong Meng then continued to fly in. Their figures instantly disappeared into the large expanse of purple chi. The deeper they flew, the thicker the aura of the original source became. Apart from a sea of purple, they could not see anything at all. Lone Moon followed behind Hong Meng. At the same time, he had to release his divine perception to follow the center, where the purple chi was the thickest. He did not know whether it was a good illusion or not. He kept feeling that the more he flew, the deeper the purple became. It gave him the illusion that it was getting darker. It was as if a monster that could support the heavens was pouncing towards them. Roared, holy shit! So it was not an illusion. It really was a monster. Lone Moon hurriedly pulled Hong Meng to the side and pulled Hong Meng back. In the next moment, a huge claw the size of a mountain directly slammed down from the side with a loud bang, causing a gust of wind to blow away the hazy purple gas in front of them. The wind was so strong that even Lone Moon could not stand steadily. What the hell is this? Lone Moon then saw clearly that it was a huge monster that was as tall as the sky. He could not even see its head. The lower half of its body was immersed in the original source purple chi. There were black and white circles around it like a zebra crossing, and those lines were constantly moving. There was no fixed pattern. Its whole body was surrounded by these two colors. He could not see its specific shape at all. Its whole body was also emitting an aura that he had never seen before. It was as if it did not exist in any plane. This is a beast of chaos. Hong Ming exclaimed, his face full of disbelief. What beast of chaos? Lone Moon asked. That is a monster that lives in the chaos. Hong Ming explained even more frantically. It must have come to this plane with the living beings of the plane. The chaos chi of those living beings nourished it. That is why it has been hiding in the original source of the plane. Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Things that came from the chaos were scarier than those that came from other planes. I don't know either. Hong Meng also looked anxious. If they let it stay here any longer, when it finished absorbing the chaos chi, it would attack the original source purple chi. Shunning this thing, Lone Moon turned to look at a certain person out of habit. But he found that there was no one behind him. There was no familiar figure. Holy shit, where are they? Did she have to disconnect at every critical moment? Hong Meng also seemed to have just realized that Shining and Chef, who had been following behind him, were gone. He paused. The purple chi just now was too thick, and we got separated from them. Shit. Lone Moon really wanted to curse now, but a strong wind swept past in front of him, with an aura that seemed to destroy everything. Lone Moon turned his hand. The fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. He picked up Hong Ming beside him and flashed to the side. Screw it. He could only attack now. Fortunately, although this beast of chaos was powerful, its movements were very slow. It was not completely without a fighting chance. My lord. Hong Ming was a little unsteady. The chaos chi that the huge beast brought could directly corrode the god power in his body. Get lost, don't get in the way. Lone Moon finished speaking, and threw Hong Ming out like a ball. Chapter 536. Hong Ming only heard a gust of wind beside his ears. Instantly, he flew out of the range of the chi of chaos. The feeling of suppression on his body disappeared, and his god power recovered. He took 2 breaths, knowing that he could not help, and could only look nervously at the people on the other side. Lone Moon had already rushed up with his sword, forming thousands of sword arrays. The sky full of sword rain began to gather to form a tornado-like shape, directly attacking the beast of chaos. Roared the beast of chaos let out a loud roar, and the sword array in the sky paused. Lone Moon tightened his grip on the sword, and directly broke through the sound wall. But the moment the blade touched the body of the beast of chaos, the god power attached to the sword dissipated, and it fell from the sky. Lone Moon was stunned, but a giant claw appeared in the sky again, slapping towards him. He barely avoided it with his sword, but was still swept by the residual wind, and the thick chi of chaos rushed towards him. He only felt a pain in his chest. All the god power in his body disappeared, and he spat out blood. He himself was stunned. After becoming the plane assistant, other than dealing with the invading manager, this was the first time he was injured by something else. But the hesitation was only for a moment. He held his sword and rushed over again. But no matter how he attacked, the sword array he formed still did not hit the beast of chaos, and fell directly, unable to hurt it at all. Instead, the injuries on his body increased. Master. I Ching looked at the slightly disheveled Lone Moon, and said with some worry, do we really not need to help Father Niao? To take over the plane, we have to go through this. Shining said in a low voice. If not this time, there will be a next time. And it would only be more serious. I Ching clenched his fists by his side, but in the end did not attack. On the other side, Father Niao's situation was getting worse, but after trying so many times, there was still a result. This beast of chaos seemed to be immune to all forms of power in this plane. Whether it was god power, immortal chi or spirit chi. Before it got close, it would be directly dispersed by the aura around it. But fortunately he still had other abilities. Lone Moon took a deep breath, and for a moment, the immortal chi in his body dissipated. The power that belonged to the plane assistant surged, and his aura changed. He looked like an ordinary person, but he had an irresistible pressure. Even Hong Meng, who was behind him, was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. Lone Moon raised the sword in his hand, and the same sword array appeared once again. But this time, it directly broke through the chaotic chi around the huge beast, and with a swoosh, a hole appeared on its body. The chaos beast let out a deafening howl. It sounded like a scream. Thick black liquid flowed down from the places that were injured by the sword formation, but it dissipated the moment it fell to the ground. Lone Moon continued to attack, and more wounds appeared on the chaos beast. Its huge body began to twist. Only then did Lone Moon see clearly that there was only a huge mouth above its head. There were no eyes, nose or other facial features. At this time, it was letting out a series of howls, and even the ground was shaking. But its body was really too big. The wounds that Lone Moon made were not fatal to the beast of chaos, unless there was something that could completely blow up its body, just like the detonator that Shuning used to blow up that planet. Damn, how could there be firearms in the Xinxia world? Even if it could be made, he did not know how to make it. Wait a minute. Suddenly, layers of complex arrays flashed in his mind. A large amount of unfamiliar yet familiar knowledge flowed into his mind, and finally turned into the explosive device from before. Holy shit, he really knew how to. Lone Moon was delighted. He immediately flew up above the chaos beast, and began to make seals with his hands. He mobilized all the assistant power in his body, and condensed a complex array. Layers appeared in his hands, and the dazzling white light of the array became brighter and brighter. In an instant, it was as if the whole world that was shrouded in purple chi was illuminated. He finally formed the last array, and mobilized the last bit of energy in his body. He flew directly towards the huge mouth of the chaos beast, and directly entered its body. The next moment there was a loud bang. Countless rays of white light shot out from the chaos beast's body like sharp blades. Its huge body swelled up instantly. Then with a loud bang, its entire body exploded, turning into pieces of black meat. Then, it dissipated into wisps of black gas. Only then did Lone Moon let out a breath, and his body relaxed. He did not even have the last bit of energy to fly on his sword, and directly fell from the sky. Chef, Shining hurriedly called out. I Ching instantly flew out, and caught the person who fell from the sky exhausted. Father Niu, are you alright? Shining went up and asked. Lone Moon directly rolled his eyes at her. Do you think I look alright? But Shining gave him a spring breeze-like smile. Father Niu is very powerful. Very powerful indeed. Chef also added. Lone Moon coldly snorted. As if thinking of something, he added. Stop sucking up, where exactly did the two of you die? Before he finished speaking, there was a loud bang in the sky. The entire sky twisted, and suddenly a huge hole appeared. The black chi that the chaos beast turned into, instantly, seemed to be attracted by something, and madly rushed into that black hole. In less than a moment, it disappeared completely, but that hole did not close. Instead, the suction force became stronger and stronger. Even the surrounding purple chi began to rush in. It's the chaos gap. Hong Meng hurriedly flew over, his expression becoming more and more anxious. That chaos beast opened up the chaos gap. What should we do? The chaos can swallow everything. If we do not block it, the entire plane will be dragged into the chaos. Master, this is... I Ching also looked at that black hole in shock, somehow feeling that it was a little familiar. Plane storm. Shining nodded. I Ching frowned. This was a little troublesome. Subconsciously looked towards Father Niu. Could this be sealed? Lone Moon, on the other hand, sighed, looked up at Shining, smiled with some bitterness and said, It looks like I can't take over this plane. He could vaguely feel that this was already a test. But plane storms could only be handled by the manager and assistant. Defeating that chaos beast had already used up all his strength. Now completely did not have any extra strength left to seal this. You can do it, Father Niu. But Shening was not the least bit anxious. Shening, it's not that I don't want to take it the situation now, simply. You can do it. But Shening interrupted his words, suddenly pulled his hand towards the direction of the plane storm, smiled sweetly and said, You are the best, Father Niu. Chapter 537. Lo Moon was stunned. In the next moment, he felt a strong power filling his body. He released it subconsciously. A white light lit up in his palm. In an instant, the surroundings were covered in white. Some special energy shot out in all directions, spreading across the entire plane. And the expanding hole in the sky seemed to be compressed by something. It became smaller and smaller in the white light. Finally, it disappeared in the air, as if it had never been there. The purple chi that surrounded them dissipated. A purple sea appeared below them, but it was slowly shrinking. In a short while it became the size of a palm. It flew up and stopped steadily in Lo Moon's palm. In the next moment, everything in the entire plane was imprinted in Lo Moon's mind. A new power flowed out of his body. It was 100 times stronger than when he became an assistant. Large amounts of information flowed into his mind. It was as if he could see every corner of the entire plane with just a thought. Although he had this feeling when he became a plane assistant, it was completely different now. It was as if the entire world was in his hands, and he could control it. Sir, you've subdued the original source. Hong Meng looked at the purple spring water in his hand happily. As he spoke, he raised his head. That's great. This way you can. He suddenly paused and looked at Lo Moon in front of him. He felt that he was different from just now. The aura on his body suddenly made his legs weak. He knelt down for no reason. You. Congratulations, Father Niu. You've officially become a manager. Shening smiled. I Ching also took a step back. He cupped his fists with a serious expression. Congratulations, Father Niu. Lo Moon was stunned. So he had only officially become a manager now? He looked down at the hand that Shening had just grabbed. Then he looked at the original source in the other hand. He felt that Shening had cheated for him just now. Manager. Sir. Hong Meng then reacted. He stared at Lo Moon with wide eyes. Their plane had a manager so soon? Was he dreaming? Get lost. Lo Moon glared at him. He threw the original source purple chi over. The original source has been subdued. Go and divide your plane. Yes, sir. No problem. Hong Meng nodded repeatedly, with a look of excitement on his face. This was their manager, theirs. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he suddenly thought of something and turned back. But my lord, I've lost half of my godly power. Separating the two realms is a little. It's really difficult. Before he could finish speaking, Lo Moon reached out and tapped his forehead. Hong Meng felt something rush into his body, and all the god power he had lost came back. His eyes widened in shock. This was the power of a manager. You can scram now. Lo Moon waved his hand. Yes. Hong Meng walked away with a dumbfounded look. Lo Moon then turned to face the two people in front of him. His expression darkened. Now I'll give you a chance to explain. What was going on with that chaos beast? You obviously left me alone to deal with it. The two of them looked at each other before I Ching explained. That was a test for you. What test? Lo Moon frowned. Father Niu, it's not that easy to take over a plane, I Ching said in a low voice. Only by gaining the plane's approval can one be a true manager. There's no world consciousness here, and the heavenly Tao was born because of you. So only by gaining the approval of the original source purple chi can one be a true manager. You've already done that just now. So that chaos beast was my test, and I can only deal with it myself? Lo Moon was stunned. Yes. I Ching nodded. If Master and I fought, it would affect the original source's judgment. Then what about what I did before? Was it a trial period? You could say that. He nodded. You allowed the heavenly Tao to be born, so you already have the right to become a manager. So the heavenly Tao was just an entry test? Lo Moon turned to look at Chef and frowned. How do you know so clearly? Wait, why is the aura on your body? His eyes widened as if he thought of something. Holy shit, when did you become a manager too? Lone Moon couldn't tell when he was an assistant before, but now that he was a manager, he realized that the aura on his body was exactly the same as his. I Ching stiffened and decided to be straightforward. Ever since Master woke up from her hibernation, I've been one. Lone Moon turned to glare at Shining. Can you be any more King lazy? 2 planes were thrown to them just like that. Father Neo, don't mind such details. Shining hurriedly handed over a fruit. Want some fruit? Get lost. Do you think I'm a mushroom? Coaxing him with the fruit. He thought for a moment before continuing. Wait, if I have to get the plane's approval to become a manager, then that plane transfer contract you gave me back then was a fake, right? Air. Shining stiffened. Her eyes shifted and she silently kept the fruit. She said seriously, Chef, what time is it? Is it time for lunch? Don't try to change the topic. This change of topic was too harsh. Lone Moon glared at her, his face as black as the bottom of a pot. You 2 are working together to trick me, right? Or have you been since Chef became a manager? No, it's not that far. I Ching hurriedly interrupted. I only found out about this when I was in the southern land, so I have to calculate from there. Is there a difference? I Ching. Shining. Alright, there's no difference. The 2 poor people trembled. A while later, forget it. Strangely, Lone Moon did not fly into a rage. His expression became calm again. He glanced at Shining. I've already accepted it, there's no other way. Father Neo is the best. Father Neo is domineering. Go to hell. Lone Moon directly rewarded them with an eye roll. He looked at the sky that suddenly began to darken. He could faintly see the horizon not far away, beginning to distort and change shape. It seemed that primordial chaos had already begun to divide. He directly turned to open the plane passage. Let's return to the divine realm first. The division has already begun. In the next moment, the 3 of them arrived in that pitch-black divine realm. There was only a golden tree standing in it. The only difference was that beside the golden tree, there was a purple tree slowly rising, slowly extending its branches. This was the plane that Lone Moon had just taken over. What's up with this tree? Lone Moon turned to look at Shining. Oh, I conveniently connected that plane with the divine realm. Shining casually explained. It's more convenient this way. Chapter 538. Lone Moon sensed for a while indeed, the entire divine realm was connected to that plane, as if this was the common space of the 2 planes. Perhaps because Hong Meng was still dividing the world, the purple tree was still growing. However, it did not look as thick and strong as the golden tree. Even the top of the tree only had 1 or 2 pitifully small leaves. After all, it was a small world that had not been born for long. Lone Moon took a look and did not pay any more attention, waiting for the division to be completed. With a thought, the pitch-black divine realm immediately changed. Apart from the 2 plain trees, a large patch of green grass appeared. Chef instructed, Master, I'm going to cook. With that said, he turned and walked away, taking out pots and pans with practiced ease. Lone Moon waved his hand, directly conjuring a table and chairs on the spot. After thinking for a while, he changed the table and chairs to a more comfortable sofa and coffee table. He even made 2 cups of tea and handed one to Shining. Here. Oh. Shining took it and drank a mouthful, then continued to nibble on her fruit. Lone Moon turned and sat on the sofa at the side, then stared hard at the person opposite, until the person was a little scared, felt that the fruit was a little changed, really could not hold it in anymore and said, Sai, ask away? Honestly, why did you do this? Lone Moon asked directly. If you're just lazy and don't want to manage, you're not that diligent now, are you? You don't have to do this at all. I'm not chef. Lone Moon's eyes darkened, his expression serious, but there was some faint worry in his eyes. Suddenly thinking of something, his eyes widened abruptly. Did something happen to you again? Not really. Shining sighed, turned to look at Chef who was cooking, put down the fruit in her hand, then said seriously, It's just that after I woke up from hibernation last time, I found some changes. What changes? Lone Moon instantly tensed up. I can't say either. Shining shook her head. I just felt that I shouldn't continue managing the plane, so I transferred it to you. Then will you be alright? No, this is not a bad change. Really? Really? Father Nyo's tense nerves finally relaxed. He thought for a moment and asked, Does your sister know? Why don't we tell her? Although he was a demon king, he was much more reliable than Shining at crucial times. Shining stiffened. There's no need. If she knew, she would have seen it the last time I woke up. Lone Moon thought about it and agreed. Given Xin Jing's level of sister complex, she should have discovered it long ago. She did not discover Xin Ying's change. Even she could not detect it. Don't worry, Father Nyo. Shen Ying continued to nibble on her fruit. Who knows, before long, I'll know the reason. But now that you've transferred the plane to us, then what are you now? Would there really be no problems? Aren't we your assistants? Now you're so. Before he could finish, Shen Ying suddenly tapped his forehead. He felt a chill on his forehead, and in an instant, a black and white pattern floated out of his body. This is Assistant Seal. Lone Moon exclaimed. This was the assistant seal that Shen Ying had given them. Why is it still here? Shen Ying retracted her hand, and the seal returned to Lone Moon's body. So, even if I'm no longer the manager, you're still my assistants. In other words, they only changed their job titles to sound nicer. But in reality, they were still working for her? Why did she suddenly want to resign? However, it was good that nothing happened to her. The assistant seal was still there. That proved that there was no problem with her cheat. And he could not sense the situation when she used too much energy the last time. He did not want to experience the dormant period of Shen 15 again. Little Ying could still consider it. Lone Moon glanced at her, his eyes darkening. After drinking half a cup of tea, he continued to ask, Since you're fine, why didn't you tell me about taking over the plane from the start? Shen Ying faltered and turned to look at him. After a while, she tilted her head and said, To get a few more months of food allowance? Get lost. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. When have I ever been short of you? Every time he said to deduct it, he still gave it to her in the end. He snatched the fruit from her hand. Little heartless. You're afraid that I'll overthink, aren't you? That's why you dragged Chef along to hide it from me? Shen Ying did not speak, but continued to take out a new one, still chewing on it lazily. Lone Moon did not continue asking, but asked instead, What's the matter with Chef? I didn't see any changes in him before. How did he suddenly become a manager? Because time is up. Shen Ying then explained lazily. He was originally the manager chosen by the realm's consciousness, and Godfiend and Kai Tian were too anxious. So they pulled me to this plane. Chef had not grown up yet, and my power was higher than his. So, Lone Moon was shocked. When you took over the plane directly chose you and gave up on Chef. Shen Ying nodded and added after thinking. It's not considered giving up, his power has been growing. It was only during the battle with the invading manager that he completely grew into a manager. So I handed him over. Shit, no wonder he was a little cheat all the way. So from the beginning, the plane opened a back door for him. This bunch of cheat dogs. Lone Moon complained. After a while he seemed to think of something, and turned to look at Shen Ying with a strange expression. Don't tell me you were worried that I would feel unbalanced. So you kept it from me, and gave me the other plane as a consolation prize? After all, they were both assistants, and one of them was suddenly promoted. No matter what, she would feel a little upset. What's more, to think about it, he was the innocent person who was pulled into this world. Lone Moon stopped chewing on the fruit, then turned to look at him. His expression was rare serious. It's not a consolation prize. I planned to do this from the beginning because Father Nyo is indeed very outstanding. Lone Moon choked, suddenly feeling a little awkward, subconsciously wanted to touch her forehead. You're praising me so seriously, are you stupid? He was a little not used to not being stabbed in the back. Can we talk properly? Shen Ying's mouth twitched, and after a while she continued. Father Nyo, it's not that easy to gain the recognition of the plane. She took a deep breath. Back then, my sister blocked countless plane invasions before she completely controlled the entire plane. Chef worked hard for 3,000 years, in order to cross the plane to find us. And even reloaded once. And I didn't even have the right to be born at the beginning. They could not make a wrong move, or they would lose everything. Lone Moon faltered. That's why they did not tell him the truth in advance, in case he was distracted, so that they could focus on taking over that plane. As for whether he wanted to be a manager, of course he wanted to. Chapter 539. Although it was troublesome to be Xin Ying's assistant, he did not think there was anything bad about it. However, anyone would be willing to take a step further. Although he had previously complained about them forcefully dragging him into the water, he actually didn't have much resentment towards them. This had nothing to do with feelings. It was an opportunity that anyone with the slightest bit of ambition would want to grasp. He tried to think about it. If he had known from the beginning that Chef was already a manager, although it wasn't to the extent of jealousy, he would still feel a little pressured. If Shining had asked him to be the manager of Hongming's plane at that time, he would have agreed in the end. On one side was a successful manager chef, while on the other side was a prospective manager. Their mentality would naturally be affected. Taking over the plane was so dangerous, so it was better to not know anything from the start. For some reason, he suddenly understood why Xin Jing objected so strongly when Shining wanted to take over the plane. It was because she had experienced that period herself, so she was even more afraid that she would be in danger. Xin Jing had always suggested that she reopen the plane. Now that she thought about it, this new plane was indeed a lot easier for her. So was Shening giving him the safest task? Shening. He suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. Huh. Shening turned around. The corners of Lone Moon's mouth unconsciously widened. The words were at the tip of his tongue, but he did not know how to say them. He felt that no matter what he said, it would be a little pretentious and not in line with his noble persona. Hence, he reached out and touched her head. After a while, he squeezed out 2 words, silly. He was clearly so lazy that he would starve to death if he wasn't watched closely. But he thought more than any of them. However, she was still a good daughter, who knew how to dote on her father. He suddenly felt that he could raise her a little more. Shining was stunned. She looked at the claws on her head, and quickly finished the fruit in her mouth. Then she grabbed her storage bag tightly. Father Niu. Yes. Let's get straight to the point. Can you stop smiling at me? I'm a little confused. She kept having the illusion that she was missing something. Lone Moon's outstretched hand stiffened, and his expression darkened. His hand, which was originally stroking her hair, turned around and forcefully rubbed her head. He successfully rubbed her hair, which was originally not very smooth, into a bird's nest. Sure enough, she was still that troublesome one. He must have been blind to be touched just now. Shening. I Ching. Sigh. Indeed, Father Niu, who had entered menopause, could not understand at all. When Hong Ming came over with a tired but excited expression, the people from God's domain just happened to be eating. Lone Moon and Shening sat on the left and right of each other. It was as if they were comparing hand speeds. The chopsticks in their hands moved like shadows across the table. More than 10 dishes on the table disappeared quickly. I Ching was standing behind Shening, one hand holding onto her hair, the other holding a comb. He was seriously combing her hair. Perhaps it was because Shening was snatching the food too fiercely, and I Ching's movements were light, so strands of hair slipped through his hands from time to time. He had no choice but to let go and smooth them back from the beginning. He seemed to have been combing for a long time, but he still tirelessly combed his hair over and over again. Hong Ming vaguely felt that something had been stuffed into his mouth. He turned his head and looked at his manager, who was busy fighting for food. Speaking of which, did Boss Lone Moon not feel it? Or was he used to it? Ahem, boss. He coughed and couldn't help but shout. Ever since he knew that Lone Moon was their manager, Hong Ming very sensibly changed the way he addressed him. The 2 people fighting for food paused. The 3 people present turned to look at him, and then turned back again. The one fighting for food snatched the food, and the one combing his hair. It was as if they didn't care about his arrival at all. Hong Ming. He suddenly felt a little heart-wrenching. It wasn't until all the food on the table had been wiped clean, I Ching's hair was tied up, and he began to clean up the bowls and chopsticks that the few of them had time to pay attention to him. Why are you here again? Lone Moon glanced at him. He still looked like that sage-like Taoist. There was no trace of the bold and fierce look he had when he was fighting for food just now. Boss, I've completed the task you gave me. Hong Meng answered with some excitement. In the future, our plane is complete. Who's with you? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He said it as if there was something going on. Hong Meng. He suddenly felt a sense of danger of being fired. What are you here for? Lone Moon asked. Hong Meng then pointed to the plane tree at the side and answered. Boss, the division has been completed. It was only then that Lone Moon turned back to look in the direction of the plane tree. Indeed, the plane tree that was just a small tree earlier was already as tall as the one beside it. It extended out countless branches, and even intertwined with the golden branches of the plane tree beside it, especially because the purple one was smaller, and the two trees were so close to each other. It gave people the illusion that they were leaning on each other. As the manager, Lone Moon could naturally sense everything that the entire plane tree sensed, including the manager of the golden plane tree chef. Lone Moon instantly felt goosebumps all over his body. He subconsciously turned his head and happened to meet Chef's gaze. Their eyes met and they both trembled. Then, they turned their heads in unison. Ugh, Hong Meng. Shining. Sir, Boss Lone Moon, what's going on? Hong Meng looked confused. Why did the two of them suddenly vomit? Hey, you don't understand if you're not in the circle. Shining patted his shoulder. Continue growing straight. Hong Meng. What did she mean? Did he miss something? Shining. Do these two plane trees need to be so close to each other? Can't they move a little? She made it seem like he was hugging Chef. It looked disgusting. Master, since the purple one is still small, why don't we plant it again? Chef also suggested. Hong Meng's face paled. Don't be rash. Do you really think it's a tree that can be planted everywhere? This is a plane. There's no other way. Shining took out a fruit and said while biting. These two planes were originally close to each other. Back then, they were too lazy to run, so they directly opened it beside them. Unless we reopen one. The two frowned. Thinking of Xin Ying's hibernation, they could only give up on the idea of moving the tree. The two exchanged another look, then turned their heads and continued vomiting. Xin Ying went forward to take a look. That newly grown purple tree, compared to the luxuriant one beside it, looked a little pitiful. There were only 1 or 2 visible leaves on the branches. Sir, this plane tree is divided into 3 realms in total. Seeing that the other 2 were vomiting and really couldn't listen, Hong Meng immediately introduced to Xin Ying like he was presenting a treasure. I divided it according to the boundaries of this plane. Chapter 540. Hong Meng pointed at the plane tree and said, the 3 realms are the human and demon realms, the immortal and demon realms, and the divine underworld. But the human and demon races are weak now, and there are not many of them. So I set up boundaries between each realm. Although the 2 races are in the same realm, they are separated from each other. The immortal and demon realms are the same, but no one from the lower realm has ascended yet, so there are no people inside, only some low-level divine races inside. Oh. Xin Ying looked at the bare branches. Why are there no leaves? This is because the realms have just been divided. The human race has not yet flourished, and this small world has not formed the 3,000 realms. Hong Meng explained. When the human race grows up, there will be more realms, forming the 3,000 realms. And if someone from the immortal and divine realms opens up a mystic realm, and is recognized by the heavenly Tao, it can also grow into a world. Then will it bear fruit? Xin Ying asked. Hong Meng stiffened. What kind of stupid question was that? Don't really treat it like a tree. After a while he laughed dryly. Hee. Madam must be joking. How can it bear? Oh, then what's that on the tree? Xin Ying reached out and pointed to the middle of the 2 trees, where the leaves were the most luxuriant. Hong Meng looked over and saw that in the gap between the purple and gold, There was a strange red color, and a round object was hidden in the layers of leaves. There's really fruit. BBB boss. Hong Meng was completely stunned, and looked around frantically, turned around and pulled Lone Moon, saying, "Boss, stop vomiting, look at the tree. Fruit, look, there's fruit." What fruit? Lone Moon really could not stand the two trees, and did not even look in that direction. Hong Meng could only turn him around. "It's the plane tree. There's fruit on the plane tree. Never, eh?" He stopped mid-sentence, and the next moment his eyes widened. "Wait, Madam Shining. Why are you climbing the tree? Hey, that's the plane tree. Every leaf is a small world, not to mention the fruit." He subconsciously wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Shining had already climbed up, her hand already reaching for the bright red fruit. "Wait. You can't pluck that. The realm will collapse." With a plop, the fruit landed in her hands. She then turned to look at him. "What did you say?" "Hong Meng." "Then nothing happened." "No, nothing." "Hee, as long as you guys are happy, my heart is so tired." Why were the three of them so unreliable? He suddenly felt that the future of the two planes was bleak. Master, Chef, who had finally recovered from vomiting, walked over and helped the person down from the tree. He glanced at the fruit in her hand. "What is this?" "I don't know. It's an apple, right?" Shining looked at the fruit. "Why don't we eat it?" With that, she opened her mouth and tried to bite it. Lone Moon snatched it from her. "Eat your sister. Eat." He glared at her, thought for a moment, then took out a bag of pastries and stuffed it into her hand in exchange. Only then did he seriously look at the fruit in his hand. This is obviously a space. Moreover, it was a space even larger than a small world. The strange thing was that his divine sense could not enter it at all. This thing doesn't seem to belong to this plane. I Ching also sensed the otherworldly aura on the fruit. He frowned. Why would it grow on the plane tree? "It doesn't grow on the tree." Shining suddenly spoke. The two faltered. "What do you mean? Didn't you climb the tree and pluck it?" Shining looked down, then turned back to look under the tree. She picked something up and said, "It was tied to the tree." The two looked and realized that it was a thin white ribbon. They could not tell what it was made of, but it was glowing slightly like moonlight. Lone Moon pulled it over and looked closely. He found that the ribbon was so light that it seemed weightless, just like real moonlight. "This is also not something from our plane." Lone Moon's expression darkened. Could it be that someone secretly tied this fruit to the plane tree when we were not around? But the plane tree and the manager were connected telepathically. If someone did something, they should be able to sense it immediately. To be able to leave this behind without anyone knowing, the other party's ability was definitely not below that of a manager. It can't be another plane manager, right? Were managers mass-produced these days? "Father Nyo, can I take a look at this ribbon?" I Ching said in a low voice. Lone Moon directly handed it over. He looked carefully at the light on the ribbon. After some thought, he directly sent a bit of immortal chi into it. In an instant, that ribbon floated up and turned into several rays of light. It slowly bent into a row of unfamiliar characters. "This is a message?" Lone Moon was stunned. "It should be an invitation," Shining suddenly said. She stepped forward and reached out towards the white light in the air. Immediately, those characters were disrupted. In the next moment, those characters recombined into words that they were familiar with. There was only a row of eye-catching big words written on it, sincerely inviting the two managers of the Immortal Spirit Plane to join the Plane Alliance organization. Big Tao Organization. All managers of this organization look forward to your union. Sincerely greetings. Big Tao Organization instantly. "What is this?" Lone Moon frowned. "What does it mean? A civilian organization of managers?" "Master, have you heard of this Big Tao Organization?" Shining replied as she ate her pastry. "I seem to have heard of it somewhere. I don't really remember. No matter what, this is specifically related to managers." Lone Moon guessed. Could it be that plane management also has some related organization? "Yes," Shining said casually. "The administrative committee is it." "What administrative committee?" The two were shocked. "It's the Plane Managers Association." Shining said calmly. Didn't I tell you before? Lone Moon. I Ching. Can you change your habit of saying things after the fact? Can you still change it? Tell me about that administrative committee first. Lone Moon took a deep breath. What was with this feeling of helplessness that he was already used to? It's not a big deal. Shining stuffed another piece of pastry into her mouth. Then she said vaguely. It's just a non-official, informal association formed by managers who are familiar with each other. Unless there's a problem, they don't contact each other even if there's a problem. What was with this feeling that it was getting more and more unreliable? Since it was so trashy, then what was the point of building an association? Were they that bored? Basically, the upper planes and planes are completely independent, but sometimes there will be some small interactions between them. Shining then slowly explained to them. In short, it was related to plane transmigration. Sometimes, those people who entered other planes actually didn't mean to invade. They could just enter accidentally. For example, being pulled in by a plane storm, being trapped in a plane gap, and so on. Chapter 541. Although people who were accidentally pulled into other planes basically had a slim chance of survival, there were always exceptions. There were even managers or assistants who, when crossing planes, got the wrong direction and transmigrated to someone else's house. At this time, the manager naturally had to bring the person back. This would inevitably cause them to meet the manager of the other plane. This happened so often that the managers found it troublesome. And because the planes existed in different forms, misunderstandings and fights were inevitable. So slowly, the familiar plane managers formed a circle. This was the administrative committee. There were no official managers. Everyone was just in name and did not invade each other. They just had to inform each other when something happened. Back when Kai Tian accidentally entered my sister's plane, it was also because he had connections with the administrative committee that my sister let him become an assistant after he informed them. Shining gave an example, thought for a while, and added, things like plane passes were also thought of by the management committee. Lone Moon's and I Ching's faces darkened. They instantly thought of that stupid A4 paper. How casual was this administrative committee? Managers are all very busy. We basically don't meet often. Oh yes, I even won an award from the association when I was studying. With that said, she suddenly switched on a light screen and clicked. The next moment, a certificate instantly popped up on the light screen. On it was written, Certificate of Award Student Shining. In this year's learning of plane assistant skills, your results are outstanding. You have been awarded the title of Outstanding Assistant Student. Specially issued this certificate as encouragement. Plane Manager Committee Random Year, Random Month, Random Day. There was even a bright red stamp on it. Lone Moon. I Ching. This really was a very casual association. Why would a group of high-level managers form such a casual association? So, this big Dao organization might be like the administrative committee, a casual, apui, an association formed by the managers of various planes? Lone Moon asked. Maybe. Shining said casually. Master is so familiar with the administrative committee. Should we join? I Ching asked. We can join. Shining frowned. But my sister is a member too. Do you want to join? Their expressions changed at the same time, and the tone of their conversation changed in an instant. Let's talk about this big Dao organization. What's with this fruit? Lone Moon looked at the fruit in his hand. They invited us to join this big Dao organization. Why did they send this space that looks like a fruit over? It was not accurate to call it a space. He could feel the unending vitality in this fruit, which meant that this fruit was a complete world. Shining shook her head, not sure either. Why don't we eat? Why don't we go in and take a look? You said you wanted to eat it, so you definitely meant it, right? I think that although the ribbon is an invitation, the fruit is probably a guide. I Ching guessed. You mean to say? Lone Moon paused. The space inside the fruit is probably where the big street club is? Yes. I Ching nodded. What's more, this fruit might not be the actual body of that space, but a Dharma body. just like the entrance to a mystic realm. Lone Moon hesitated for a moment, and directly sent a bit of immortal chi into it. Indeed, he could not find out what was going on inside the fruit. It really was a fake fruit. It seemed like they had to go and take a look to find out what the so-called Big Tao organization was. Then let's go and take a look. What's more, it was already written clearly as an invitation, so it should not have any ill intentions. Perhaps they could really see some managers of other planes. Do we really have to go? I Ching frowned. He felt that something was amiss about this matter. Since they have a way to tie this fruit to the plane tree without us noticing, they might have other tricks up their sleeves. Lone Moon said, whether they are friend or foe, we have to go and meet them. I Ching was silent for a while, and did not object. Boss. Hong Meng, who was at the side, was shocked. He looked at Lone Moon with tears in his eyes. You want to leave the plane? That's too dangerous. Their plane had just stabilized. How could they just leave it like that? We'll be back soon, it won't take much time. Lone Moon glanced at him. Your god power has already recovered. Go and help Rabbit manage the divine race. And Fatty, go and help him when you're free. But what about this plane? How about I go too? What has this got to do with you? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Don't worry, I can sense anything. You can scram now. With that said, he opened the plane passage and chased Hong Meng back. Let's go. After clearing the area, Lone Moon walked back. Just as he was about to set off, he glanced at Shining and added, Don't get lost again. Oh. With that said, he clenched his fist and crushed the fruit in his hand. Indeed, a white light enveloped the three of them, and they disappeared from the divine realm in the next moment. Lone Moon thought that since the so-called Big Tao organization was built by the managers, it would be high class. Yet with a flash of white light, they arrived on a busy street. There were people coming and going all around. It was very lively. There were many stalls on the street, some selling food, some selling toys, and some selling daily necessities. It looked like a street for mortals, and did not look like the office of a management organization at all. How could this be? What happened to leading the way? Did the fruit expire? Master. Father Neo. I Ching's expression changed as he said in a daze, The god power in my body disappeared. What? Lone Moon was shocked. He subconsciously sensed his body. Indeed, his body was empty. Not to mention god power, there wasn't even a trace of immortal chi. He tried using his spirit power, but there was still no reaction. How could this be? Because it's outside the plane. Shining said. The two of them stared blankly, and then reacted. That's right. That fruit didn't belong to their plane in the first place, and this looked like a mortal realm. It was normal that there was no immortal spirit chi, but since that Big Tao organization invited them here, why did they let them enter this mortal realm? Regret it midway? Did they want to trap them here? But although this place restricted cultivators, they were managers. If they wanted to go back, they could open the plane door anytime. Let's scout around first. Lone Moon looked at the sky and suggested, perhaps because there was something special about that fruit. They suddenly appeared on the street, but no one was alarmed. It was as if they had been here all along. Chapter 542. The few of them wanted to go out of the city to take a look, but found that the city gates were already closed. There seemed to be some sort of restriction set up by the city, and they couldn't just fly out. Let's find a place to stay first. Lone Moon then turned and led the master and disciple to an inn at the side. Are the two of you eating or staying? The innkeeper immediately came up to them and asked enthusiastically. We're staying, Lone Moon replied. He turned to look at Shining and added, We're eating too. Prepare 3 superior rooms for us. Just send the food up. 3 rooms. Wasn't it 2? The innkeeper faltered and looked up at them. Only then did he see Shining in the middle, but he didn't mind and said even more enthusiastically, 3 superior rooms. A total of 30 coins per night. This way please. With that said, he called a waiter over and led them to the back hall. Lone Moon followed directly, but the master and disciple stopped in their tracks when they heard this. They tugged at the parent in front and couldn't help but ask worriedly, Father Neo, This is the mortal realm. Do we have money? Dharma spells weren't working now, and spirit stones and immortal stones couldn't be used either. Nonsense. Lone Moon rolled his eyes at him. When did he ever lack money? Then he explained. Haven't we used up the money that the unlucky fellow dug up last time? Oh. The two of them sighed like they were poor, and both gave him a thumbs up. Reliable. While leading the way, Lone Moon used his business instincts and asked the waiter about the news in the city. It turned out that the place they were in now was called Wuling City, the only city within a radius of 1,000 miles. There weren't any officials here, and the one in charge was a city lord with the surname Han. And there really weren't any cultivators here. Immortals were even more of a legend, and the waiter directly called it a scam. He then asked if there were any strange things happening in the city recently. And the waiter also shook his head and said he didn't know. This looked like a very ordinary mortal city. The more Lone Moon asked, the more confused he became. He completely didn't know what the so-called Big Tao organization was trying to do by leading them here. None of the people in this city looked like a manager. Seeing that the sky was already dark, the few of them could only stay first. This place is strange, and there are no cultivators here. Since it's night time, we should take advantage of it to explore our surroundings. Lone Moon suggested. That Big Tao organization must have a reason for sending us to such a place. He turned to look at I Ching. Chef, you go to the East City to take a look. I'll go to the West City. As for Shening, he paused. You stay here and sleep. In case she gets lost. Oh, don't run around. We might not be able to pick you up here. After all, this was another plane. Don't worry, everything will be fine. When she said this, she became even more worried. What should she do? Lone Moon looked at her worriedly. After a while he got up and was about to go out. Suddenly, he heard light footsteps coming from outside the door. It was as if the footsteps were deliberately light, heading straight to the left. Someone went into the next room. I Ching frowned. The two rooms next door were booked by them, and the one on the left was his. It was only because Father Neo had something to tell them that they came to Master's room to discuss it. They couldn't use sorcery here. It was very inconvenient. For a moment they didn't know who it was. Lone Moon also felt that it was strange. Just as he was about to go out to take a look, Chef pulled him. It's coming. Indeed, the footsteps came from the next room and headed straight here. It walked very slowly, as if it was weighing its feet. After a while, a figure appeared on the window. It lowered its body. Then there was a soft poof. A small hole appeared in the window paper. A thin bamboo tube stretched in and blew out waves of white smoke. Lone Moon. I Ching. Shening. This was poison? What kind of godlike luck was this? They actually encountered a black shop? They had seen many demons and ghosts. This was the first time the three of them saw such a pure and unpretentious trick to harm people. They suddenly had the urge to not expose him. They had to cooperate with him and act. Lone Moon sighed. In the end, he controlled himself and pushed the door open. He looked at the figure who was leaning against the window and blowing the smoke in. Is it fun? That person was startled by the sudden appearance of the person, and in a moment of carelessness, he choked and inhaled a mouthful of smoke. Immediately, he coughed painfully, and then his eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the ground with a thud. Father Neo who did nothing. He walked forward to take a look. Indeed, it was the waiter who led them in. With this kind of psychological quality, where did he get the courage to run a black shop? I Ching also walked out. Looking at the person on the ground, his expression darkened. What do we do with this person? How would I know? I have no experience in this kind of thing. Lone Moon also looked helpless. I just came out and he choked himself and fainted. I Ching thought about it. Then he took 2 steps forward. Out of habit he conjured a seal. Then he remembered that there was no spirit chi here, and he couldn't use sorcery. So he bent his finger and pressed on the person's most painful acupuncture point. Ah! In the next moment, the waiter cried out in pain and sat up like a corpse. He rubbed the place that was pressed and looked up at the two. A look of confusion flashed in his eyes. He immediately woke up. You guys! He crawled backward in a panic. As he crawled he shouted, Wang heirs you see. They. What are you screaming for? Before he finished shouting, 2 more people ran up from the other side. They were holding big knives in their hands. It seemed that they had been waiting below for a long time. I told you to be gentler. No, they're not asleep. They're awake. They're awake. The waiter hurriedly pointed in their direction. There was still panic on his face. Only then did the 2 people look over. They paused for a moment, but immediately came over with knives with fierce expressions. Even if they're awake, we'll still send them on their way. With that said, they raised the knives in their hands and directly slashed. That slash was very ordinary. There was no technical content to speak of. It was so ordinary that it was just an ordinary slash. It had been too long since he saw such an ordinary move. Even Lone Moon felt that it was a little novel. He subconsciously raised his hand and grabbed the tip of the knife. But he accidentally used too much force. There was only a cracking sound. The sharp blade was directly crushed by him. The person holding the knife paled. He looked at his broken knife in disbelief. Only then did he realize that he had hit an iron plate. He turned and wanted to run. Lone Moon didn't say much. He directly knocked the person unconscious. On the other side, Chef also dealt with the other criminal. The waiter who had just woken up was quite sensible. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. 2 heroes, spare me. I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again. With that said, he began to kowtow. Chapter 543. Tell me, how many people are there in this inn? Lone Moon asked directly. No more. The waiter replied as he trembled. There are only 3 of us in this inn. I was forced by the 2 of them. Lone Moon naturally did not believe him. He was about to ask in detail, when suddenly there was a scream. It sounded like a woman's voice. Lone Moon glanced at Chef. It's downstairs. He was about to go downstairs when he instructed, bring Shunning along. With that said, he brought the waiter downstairs. He saw that the door to one of the guest rooms downstairs was wide open, and there was a girl sitting on the floor, looking in the direction of the room with a terrified expression. Seeing him coming over, she screamed again and crawled backward. Don't kill me. Lone Moon ignored her and went straight into the room to take a look. Only then did he realize that there was blood on the bed. There was an old man lying on the bed, already dead, his body covered with knife wounds. There was also an open package scattered on the floor. He instantly understood what the 2 people with knives were doing downstairs. He raised his hand and threw the waiter over. You did it. No, it's them. They killed her. I only knocked her out. It has nothing to do with me. The waiter hurriedly argued. Lone Moon could not be bothered to listen anymore. He directly knocked the waiter out, and then looked at the girl on the floor. She seemed to be scared out of her wits, looking at Lone Moon with even more wariness and fear. It was only when Chef walked in with Shunning that she seemed to react. Perhaps because she was of the same sex, she crawled towards Shunning, clutching tightly at the corner of her clothes. She still looked like she was in shock. Shunning was stunned. What happened? I Ching asked. Someone was killed, Lone Moon replied. He glanced at the girl on the floor. She should know the people in this room. Let's go out first. I Ching nodded, obviously smelling the thick stench of blood in the room. He glanced at the girl who was still clutching Shunning tightly and explained. We are also guests staying here. We will not harm you. The girl was stunned for a moment before regaining some of her senses. She followed them out with a look of horror on her face. The few of them sat down on the chairs in the courtyard. The woman clutched the teacup in front of her tightly. She had finally recovered, but her hands were still trembling. It seemed that she was quite frightened. After a while, she looked at the few of them gratefully. Thank you, everyone, for saving me. She had also realized that the other party was not a cup person. She had escaped death. Don't worry, it's nothing. Lone Moon frowned. Initially, he had found it interesting, but now that someone had died, his mood became heavy. Miss, you are also a customer of this inn. Yes. She nodded, took a sip of the tea, and then explained. I'm from the South City, and I came here with Grandma Wong from the same village to look for my family. It was only when she arrived that she found out that her family had already moved away. She wanted to stay here for a night before setting off for home. I didn't expect that in the middle of the night, Grandma Wang would. As she spoke, her tears fell. Longmun's expression darkened. He didn't expect that this and specialized in scamming outsiders. Then the people who committed the crime. The girl suddenly thought of something, and her body trembled again. Don't worry, Longmun answered. They won't wake up until dawn. The waiter said that there were only 3 people in the inn. They shouldn't have accomplices. She heaved a sigh of relief. She turned to look in the direction of the room, and then immediately turned back in fear. With some hesitation, she said, "This is a murder case. Benefactors, are you planning to report it to the authorities?" Report to the authorities? Longmun paused, then remembered that such things happened in the mortal world. The police had to be called. You're right, we do have to report it to the authorities. But we're not familiar with this place. We don't know where to report it. Report to the city lord residence, of course. The girl looked at him with some surprise, as if surprised that he did not know such a simple thing. She stood up and pointed in the direction of the east. The city lord residence is in the east of the city. There's no curfew in the city now. We have to quickly inform them. Longmun thought about it, then stood up and said, I'll go alone. He turned back to Chef and said, Look after Shining. Chef nodded. Only then did he turn and walk out. Instead, the girl was stunned. She looked back and forth between the 3 of them. Weren't they looking after those fainted criminals? Why were they looking after this girl? Once Father Neil left, he did not return for 4 hours. As Shining waited, she became hungry. Chef was bored. He turned to the kitchen to make supper. At that moment, only Shining and the girl who survived were left in the courtyard. The courtyard became quiet. The only sounds in the courtyard were the sound of a certain person chewing on fruit, and the occasional sound of cooking in the kitchen. Want some? Shining handed a fruit over. The girl was stunned. She hesitated for a moment before taking it. Thank you, Mississippi. Perhaps it was because she was frightened, but there was still a trace of fear in her eyes. She thought of something and asked tentatively, May I know how to address you, miss? Shining. So it's Miss Shun. My name is Fong Fong. May I know why Miss Shun and the other 2 came to Wuling City? I don't know. Fong Fong was stunned. What did he mean by don't know? She was stunned. She did not take it to heart. She casually said a few more words. Seeing that she was focused on chewing on her fruit, it was not good for her to ask more. The atmosphere became cold. She suddenly felt a little restless. After thinking for a moment, she said, The weather is cold tonight. How about I make a pot of tea for you? Sure. Shining nodded. She then stood up and walked to the front yard. At that moment, Shining was the only one left in the huge yard. Chef's supper was not ready yet. She was bored waiting. What's more, this city was built by the river and connected to the sea. The other side of the yard was a view of the river. From time to time, there would be a gust of wind from the river, carrying a faint sharp moan, as if someone was singing in a low voice. Shining was stunned. She subconsciously looked back, and saw that a figure had appeared on a rock by the river. It was a man with long dark green hair. He looked very flirtatious. His upper body was bare, but his lower body had a huge fish tail. He was sitting on a rock by the river, singing in a low voice while smiling at her seductively. Shining only took a glance, then turned back and continued chewing on her fruit. That man was stunned for a moment, as if surprised by her reaction. Then he opened his mouth again and sang even louder than before. That fragmented voice was like a song that seduced one's soul, making one lose their mind. Shining was stunned. She turned back to look at him again, then continued chewing on her fruit. Chapter 544. The man was a little annoyed. He frowned and clenched his fists by his side. Seeming to have thought of something, he took out a luminous pearl out of nowhere and threw it at her. It rolled all the way to a certain someone's feet. Shining lowered her head to take a look, not to mention picking it up. She ignored it and continued to focus on the fruit in her hand. The man had no choice but to take out a bigger one and throw it out. Shening still ignored it. The man seemed to want to drag it out with her. He continued to throw luminous pearls, and each one was bigger than the one before. At first, Shening would look down to take a look, but later on, she didn't even look, until the man took out a fist-sized pearl and threw it over. The huge luminous pearl hit her hand with a plop. Shening didn't catch it, and the fruit in her hand fell to the ground. Shenying's face darkened. She stared at the half of the fruit on the ground for a while, and narrowed her eyes. Then she stood up and picked up the biggest luminous pearl, and turned around. The man was delighted. He immediately continued to sing to her, wanting to confuse her in one fell swoop. Just as he started to sing, he heard the other party suddenly say, "Only you know how to throw, right?" With that said, he threw the luminous pearl back. Before the man could react, he felt a gust of strong wind sweeping toward him. Something flew past his ear with a whoosh. With an aura that could break through everything, it flew toward the river surface behind him. The next moment he heard a whoosh. The entire river surface was instantly split into two by something. Immediately after, a loud rumble came from the opposite mountain. In the middle of the entire mountain peak, a huge circular hole was suddenly blasted open. At a glance, one could even see the endless sea on the other side of the hole. The man! What just happened? Who was he? Where was he? This brat deserves a lesson. Before the man could react, an angry voice rang in his ear. The next moment he felt a weight on his tail. His entire body slid down from the rock. Shening dragged him by his tail, all the way back to the courtyard, and threw him on the ground full of luminous pearls. "Miss Shen, what was that sound just now?" "Ah." Fong Fong came in with tea, and saw the man with a human body and a fish tail on the ground. She was so shocked that she screamed, What is this?" "Master." Chef rushed over with a dish in one hand and a spatula in the other. He stared blankly at the person on the ground. "This is fish. It could also be a whistle spirit. It had been screaming for a long time just now. It was so noisy." Oh then, Chef finally put down the dish in his hand and took out a kitchen knife. "Do you want an extra dish?" "Fong Fong." "The man." "Shening. I'm back." Lone Moon happened to walk in. "I've already informed the City Lord Manor. They've sent people over." Where did this merman come from? Under the illumination of the night luminescent pearls, Lone Moon immediately saw the man in the middle, who looked a little dazed. "It came from the water." Shening pointed to the riverside. Lone Moon turned around. "Holy shit. What did you do this time? Why was there a big hole in the opposite mountain as soon as he came back?" Shening thought about the size of that pearl just now and replied, "Played tennis?" "Tennis your ass. You can make a hole in the mountain if you play tennis." "Miss Shening, are you all right?" Fong Fong also walked over quickly and looked fearfully at the merman on the ground, who seemed to have been scared silly. "Is this really a merman?" Legend has it that mermen like to eat human flesh and often use songs to bewitch people. I didn't expect that. It's actually true. So this merman picked Shening? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This merman's taste was quite special. He picked one that couldn't be messed with. He directly took 2 steps forward and picked up the merman on the ground. "Tell me, what do you want?" That merman was stunned for a moment and turned to look in Shen Ying's direction. His entire body began to tremble again. He opened and closed his mouth a few times, but could only let out ear-piercing cries, his eyes filled with fear. "Can't speak." Lone Moon was stunned for a moment. Impossible. Could it be that his sentience was not developed? Looking closely, this merman really seemed to be a low-level demon beast. But this place clearly didn't have spirit chi. Why would there be creatures like mermen? Just as he was thinking, a series of orderly footsteps came from the street outside. More than 10 people who looked like officials walked over, who reported that there was a murder case here. The person walking at the front asked loudly and stepped into the courtyard first. In the next moment, he was so frightened by the creature in Lone Moon's hand that his legs turned to jelly, and he directly took a few steps back. What monster is this?" Lone Moon didn't know how to answer for a moment. Instead, Fong Fong, who was at the side, answered, replying to Sir Officer, "This seems to be a merman. It came out of the water and wanted to eat humans. It just happened to be restrained by these few young masters. Merman? The fear in that official's eyes retreated a little. He looked down at the luminous pearls on the ground, and his eyes instantly lit up. Is this the legendary merman whose tears turn into pearls? Fong Fong was stunned and could only answer, maybe it is. I guess. The official's eyes lit up even more. He had long lost the fear from before. He stared closely at the creature in Lone Moon's hand. Can this thing still hurt people? Lone Moon frowned but still replied, mermen live on water. Naturally they won't be aggressive once they're on land. Unless it was a high-level merman that could completely transform, it was obvious that this one wasn't. Good. That official said a few good words in a row. The excitement on his face seemed to be uncontrollable. Thinking of something, he then turned to look at Lone Moon and the others and said, this demon is too dangerous. Leaving it here might cause unforeseen events. It's better that I help you bring it into the City Lord Manor to be locked up. With that said, without waiting for their reply, he hurriedly ordered the few people behind him, go capture that demon. The people behind the official rushed forward. Was this the rhythm of snatching things? Lone Moon hesitated for a moment, but did not stop them, allowing them to take the merman away. Sir, then the murder case here. Seeing that they were about to leave, Fong Fong came forward with some anxiety. Only then did that official remember his purpose of coming, and hurriedly said, the matter here, the person who reported the case just now has already explained very clearly. Don't worry. Those people who murder for money, the city lord will naturally deal with them. With that said, he asked for the location of the 3 people in the shop, and conveniently brought the 3 people who fainted away to be locked up as well. He didn't even confirm the whole story again, as if he couldn't wait to go back. It seemed like he was curious about that merman whose tears turned into pearls, and wanted to bring it back personally to verify. Even the officials of the city lord residence were so careless. It was no wonder that the shop owners here dared to run illegal businesses in the city. Lone Moon shook his head. But there was no need for them to interfere in mortal affairs. Besides, this was not their plane. Chapter 545. Fong Fong, on the other hand, looked at them with a confused expression. It's getting late. Lone Moon looked at the sky. Those officials were busy presenting treasures to the city lord. It seemed like he couldn't be bothered with them. The matter has been resolved. Let's rest first. With that said, he pulled Shin Ing and Chef upstairs, taking away the dishes on the table. The girl couldn't say anything more. She turned and found an empty guest room to stay in. Did you hear? Last night, a huge hole suddenly appeared in a mountain. It's hundreds of feet wide. How can we not see such a huge hole? That thing appeared overnight. And it looks very flat. It doesn't seem man-made. Rumor has it that someone heard an immortal voice from the sky last night. That voice was dreamy and illusory, like an immortal song from the 9 heavens. In that case, could that huge hole be a miracle from the heavens? An auspicious sign? Definitely. Otherwise, who would have the ability to dig through the mountain and leave such a huge hole in one night? It can only be that an immortal descended last night. Then isn't this a blessed city? Early in the morning, the entire city was talking about the huge hole that suddenly appeared in the middle of the night on the other side of the river. And the more they talked about it, the more mysterious it became. Some even swore that they saw an immortal with their own eyes. In an instant, that huge hole became a miracle. Many people even wanted to cross the river to burn incense and worship it. Lone Moon, Shining, I Ching. Alright, to a certain extent it really was done by an immortal. While he was reporting the case last night, Lone Moon actually investigated the city, but the result was the same as before. This was a mortal city. It was no different from other places. There were no other places that had anything to do with managers. So he decided to go out of the city to look around. If he still didn't find anything, he would return to the plane first. Anyway, they weren't particularly interested in this big Dao organization. But just as they were about to leave the city, they were stopped by someone. It was a familiar person. It was the official who brought people to investigate the case last night. But a merman was taken away. This time, he didn't look as arrogant as before. He smiled kindly. Everyone, the city lord invites you. City lord? Lo Moon faltered. It must be because of that mermaid. It seemed like this official had really offered that mermaid to the city lord. After thinking for a moment, he didn't decline. He nodded and followed the official. After a while, they arrived at the largest building in the city lord's mansion. Last night, when a person came to report the case, he just explained the situation at the door and went back. At this moment, the three of them were invited into the mansion and brought to a reception hall. There was already a person sitting inside. Upon closer inspection, it was the girl who survived yesterday. She seemed to be called Fong Fong. Miss Shen, two young masters, why are you here too? Fong Fong also looked at the three of them in surprise. Miss Fong, why are you here? Lo Moon asked. This morning, they had parted ways and left that inn. Didn't she say she was going back to her hometown? It was the officer at the city gate who said that the city lord had given the order to bring me here. Fong Fong replied. Lo Moon frowned. The city lord's voice could be heard from outside the door. In the next moment, a middle-aged man walked in hurriedly. His eyes lit up when he saw them. He quickened his steps and walked over excitedly. You were the ones who found that mermaid. Lo Moon and Chef exchanged a look before stepping forward and answering. We were the ones who found it. Insolence. The moment he finished speaking, the person beside suddenly shouted. You actually don't bow when you see the city lord? Don't mind this kind of empty courtesy. The city lord waved his hand. He became even more excited. He sized up Lo Moon and turned to look at I Ching beside him. Satisfied, he said. I can tell that the two of you have extraordinary skills. It's no wonder that you could catch the mermaid, who has always been cruel and seductive. Actually, it was Shening who caught it. Yet the city lord was even more enthusiastic towards them. His eyes were filled with curiosity. I wonder if the few of you can tell me how you caught it. Lo Moon was stumped. He couldn't possibly say that Shening had smashed a hole in the mountain first and scared the mermaid silly before catching it. We've all learned some martial arts before. We met this mermaid by chance. That's why we caught it. Lo Moon could only make up a story. I see. The city lord was obviously excited and did not suspect anything. It seems that Mr. is also an extraordinary person. You're too kind, city lord. It's just a small trick. You don't have to be so humble, mister. The city lord became even more excited. To be able to catch such an extraordinary creature. How can you be an ordinary person? Don't worry, I'll remember your contributions. I'll definitely reward you handsomely. Thank you, city lord. It would be a waste not to accept money that was delivered to his doorstep. He smiled even more happily. He looked at the two of them again. Something flashed across his eyes. I see that the few of you are foreigners. Since you have such skills, why don't you stay in my residence and seek a future? He suggested directly. After thinking for a while, he added, to be honest, I've always been very fond of such rare beasts. I've collected many in my residence. But this is the first time I've seen someone who could catch a mermaid in the sea. I really value talent. So he wanted to hire thugs. Lo Moon smiled. Thank you, city lord, for your kind intentions. But the few of us have important matters to attend to. We're just passing by this city. It's really not good for us to stay. Oh, his expression darkened instantly. He seemed to be displeased with his rejection. You have to think carefully. If you stay in my residence, riches and glory will be at your fingertips. Isn't that better than you running around everywhere? Hope you understand, city lord. Lo Moon still replied. We do have important matters to attend to. The city lord's expression darkened even more. After a while, he continued smiling. Don't be in such a hurry to make a decision. I see that the few of you are also knowledgeable about alien races. Why don't you follow me to the rare beasts garden to take a look at those alien races I've collected? Then you can make your decision. With that said, he turned and walked out without waiting for their reply. The guard beside him, who was carrying a knife, took 2 steps forward. He looked like he was waiting for the few of them to move. Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. Something flashed in their eyes at the same time. They then followed, pulling Shening along. Fong Fong, on the other hand, had a look of panic on her face. She had no choice but to follow them. She walked carefully beside Shening. The rare beast garden that the city lord mentioned was not far. The few of them followed him through a few courtyards. Finally, they turned into a courtyard with a completely different style. The courtyard was huge, but it was filled with rare treasures. The roadside was filled with all kinds of exotic flowers and plants. From time to time, they could see all kinds of odd-looking creatures passing through. There were deer with flowering branches on their heads. There were cats that could speak human language. Strange beasts with strange appearances. These were all things that could not be easily seen in the mortal realm. Chapter 546. Fong Fong was completely stunned. She looked at everything in front of her in disbelief. Even Lone Moon and I Ching's eyes flashed with surprise. There were actually all demon beasts and spirit herbs here. In this world without spirit chi, where did they come from? How's my rare beast garden? The city lord said with some intention of showing off. It really leaves a deep impression. Lone Moon replied politely. These are just some small things. He continued. Follow me inside. With that said, he continued to walk forward. The deeper they went, the more things they saw around them. Lone Moon looked carefully. Even the surrounding spirit herbs, from the original first and second level, there were already fourth and fifth level ones appearing at the back. They could be considered as mid-level spirit herbs, but he still couldn't sense any bright aura of spirit chi. Lone Moon suppressed the surprise in his heart, followed the city lord all the way into a cave. There were no more spirit herbs in the surroundings. The cave was no longer dark. The stone walls at the side were covered with small colorless flowers. The flowers were transparent, but emitted a faint white light. Fong Fong seemed to have never seen such a strange flower. She subconsciously reached out and touched the left side. In the next moment, a terrifying beast roar came from the stone wall. Something rushed out from the stone wall, opened its mouth and bit towards her. Fortunately, Shening, who was next to her, reached out and pulled her. Thus she managed to avoid it. Fong Fong was startled. Her face instantly turned as pale as snow. She panted heavily. Half of her body fell limply onto Shening, looking like she was quite frightened. Ha ha ha. I forgot to remind everyone. There is a stone beast living in this stone wall. It has a bad temper. This flower is his favorite, you can't touch it. The city lord reminded without much sincerity, then continued to walk forward. Fong Fong's face was so scared that there was no trace of blood on her face. Shening held her up, then stood up with a face still full of shock. After a while she said softly, "Thank you." Shening turned back to look at her in surprise, crunched a bite of the fruit, then nodded and responded, "Mm." The group headed straight into the cave. After a while, the surroundings suddenly heated up. The city lord stopped in front of a huge metal door and introduced with even more excitement. "This is the most unique beast in my precious beast's garden. Even I, the city lord, don't know what it is. It took a lot of effort to catch him." After saying that, he activated the mechanism at the side. Immediately, a wave of hot air rushed over. There was another iron fence inside, and through the gap in the middle, they could see raging flames everywhere. And in the middle of the raging flames, there was a giant beast that was as tall as 3 people lying inside. This was a 7th grade flame beast. Lone Moon hurriedly turned to look at I Ching. Seeing him nod, he hid the shock in his eyes. There was a 7th-ranked demonic beast, but no spiritual chi. Interesting. How is it? The city lord looked at them again and said, "I was even able to capture such a monster, which shows the power of my city. Have you changed your mind and decided to stay and work for me?" The city lord is naturally powerful and rich enough to rival a country. Lone Moon smiled and said, "But we really don't want to stay here. It's not convenient for us to stay in the city for long. We can only let down your good intentions." The city lord's expression darkened even more. A guard at the side spoke up directly. "You actually don't know how to appreciate favors. It's really too Before he could finish, the city lord raised his hand to stop him. His eyes darkened as he smiled and said, "All right, since you don't want to stay, then I won't force you. You can leave." "Thank you, city lord." Lone Moon gave Chef a look and turned to walk out. But the city lord and that guard behind did not follow, as if they really intended to watch them leave. But they had only taken a few steps when they suddenly heard a cracking sound. Their feet suddenly sank, and the originally flat road disappeared directly. The four of them fell down together. They could still faintly hear the curses of a certain city lord from above. "Unappreciative things. Serves you right to become food in the mouth of a monster." Among the four, the most panicked one was not Fong Fong. She screamed directly. Lone Moon and I Ching were long prepared. Chef directly turned and hugged Shining, who was beside him. Lone Moon also grabbed Fong Fong, who had a look of horror on her face. They landed on the ground in a few leaps. The sound of water splashing could be heard beside their ears. Lone Moon directly took out a pearl and shook it. Their surroundings lit up instantly. Only then did they see clearly that they were standing on a protruding rock. Below them was an underground river a few meters wide. In the river, hideous-looking strange fish jumped out of the water from time to time, revealing their mouths full of sharp teeth. Fong Fong's expression was even uglier. She instantly broke free from Lone Moon's hand and hid behind Shining, as if she was used to it. What is this place?" The few of them did not answer. Instead, I Ching looked at her tightly, holding onto his master's hand. He frowned and pointed to the right after a while. "Father Nio, over there." What over there?" Fong Fong's face was still full of horror and confusion. "Why did the city lord suddenly lock us up here? He didn't want us to live in the first place." Lone Moon explained casually. "He probably didn't want outsiders to know about the mere people he obtained. So those of us who know, either become his people, or become dead people who can't speak." Fong Fong's eyes widened abruptly. Her face was full of disbelief. She didn't seem to think that the dignified city lord would do such a despicable thing. Lone Moon had long guessed that the city lord was not a good person. Otherwise, why would that shop owner open a shady shop in the city so brazenly? The reason why they came over here was because he had looked around the entire city yesterday. Only the city lord's abode had not been searched. So he just went with the flow and came to take a look. But he didn't expect that there would really be a discovery. A place without spirit chi would actually grow spirit herbs and high-level demon beasts. This was really too strange. In addition, when they saw that 7th-level demon beast just now, he and Chef felt a trace of spirit chi at the same time. Originally, it was not impossible to take advantage of the situation and pretend to agree to the city lord's enlistment. But it was too troublesome. Not only was it a waste of time, they also couldn't investigate openly. They might as well just fall out with him. But they didn't expect that this trace of spirit chi would coincidentally appear in this underground river. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a pity that the spirit chi was too weak. In addition, this place was strange. Their spells couldn't be used. Naturally, they didn't have to use their divine perception to investigate. It was very troublesome. But as long as they could find the source of that trace of spirit chi, they would probably be able to find out what exactly was going on in this place. However, this woman called Fong Fong was going to suffer an unexpected calamity. "Master, let's go," I Ching said and directly carried Shining. With a few leaps, he used the protruding rocks on both sides of the underground river to move forward along the direction of that underground river. Chapter 547. Miss Fong, sorry for the offense. Lone Moon also glanced at Fong Fong and brought her along to follow, but he was carrying her. The two of them were very fast, but they still followed the flow of that underground river for an hour and still did not see the end of this underground river. By right, even if it was an underground river, it should flow into a river or into the sea. They must have long left the perimeter of that city, but still did not find the end. Chef, who was leading the way, suddenly paused and turned to look at the stone wall on the right. "What's wrong?" Lone Moon also stopped. I Ching turned back to look at him. The direction has changed. Lone Moon was stunned and felt carefully indeed. The spirit chi that had been following the river just now suddenly made a sharp turn and entered the stone wall at the side and seemed to be even thicker. I Ching thought about it, then took a few steps back and put down the person in his hand. Master, wait here for a while, don't get too close. With that said, he stuffed a fruit into her hands. Oh! Shening took it and took 2 steps back. Lone Moon also hurriedly pulled Sister Fong Fong back. Only then did I Ching take out a long sword from his storage bag and focused on the stone wall at the side and slashed hard. Instantly, there was a loud crash, though he could not use sorcery, but Chef's swordsmanship still broke the entire stone wall in an instant. Large pieces of rubble tumbled down with a rumble, revealing a passage that was forcefully slashed by the sword chi. Let's go, master. I Ching kept his sword and then turned around. Shening followed. Wait for me. Fong Fong hurriedly took 2 steps forward, still following behind Shening with some shock. Lone Moon could only walk at the back. The passage that Chef temporarily split open was not very wide. At first it could only allow one person to pass through, but for some reason, the further in they walked, the wider it became. Only the surroundings became even darker. Even the illumination bead in Lone Moon's hand seemed unable to illuminate the surroundings completely. Fong Fong's expression became more and more flustered, and she followed even faster, and even subconsciously pulled Shenying's hand. What exactly is this place? I don't know. Shenying replied as she continued to chew on her fruit. There was no hint of panic on her face. It was as if she was not in an unknown and dangerous place, but had come specially to explore. Fong Fong took a look at her, and for some reason, she wasn't that afraid anymore. Miss Shun is really brave, even I'm not this nervous. She revealed a kind smile and suddenly seemed to have thought of something. Oh yes, I also bought a few pears on the street this morning. Since Miss Shun likes fruits so much, would you like to try some? After saying that, she directly took out a pear from her bag. Shening didn't look at the pear. Instead, she turned her head and looked straight at her. She didn't respond for a long time. When the other party thought that she was going to reject him, she suddenly smiled and nodded. All right. Thank you. After saying that, he took it. You're welcome. Fong Fong smiled back at her and turned to look ahead. Suddenly, her expression changed as she said, Hey, is there light in front? Is it the exit? With that said, she pulled Shening with a look of pleasant surprise and took 2 quick steps forward. Indeed, not far away, there was suddenly a white light, and it was getting brighter and brighter. At the same time, a thick wave of spirit chi rushed towards them. I Ching and Gu exchanged a look behind them and quickened their steps. Great, we can finally go out. Fong Fong was even more delighted. Her face was full of excitement. The white light in front of them was increasing, but it didn't look like sunlight at all. Instead, it looked like a large patch of moving light spots. She stopped in her tracks and looked in front of her in shock. All she saw was a large patch of thick white in front of her. She couldn't tell what it was, as if countless light spots had gathered together and covered the ground. It was flowing slowly, as if it was a white spring. In a blink of an eye, everything around them disappeared. It was as if they were transported to another time and space. Everything around them was dark, leaving only that patch of white in front of them. What is this? Fong Fong's face was full of shock. Lone Moon took a step forward and suddenly turned his head and smiled. What is this? Shouldn't you tell us? Young master, what are you talking about? She turned back with a confused look. I don't understand what you mean. Lone Moon's eyes darkened. You spent so much effort to lure the 3 of us here. It can't be just for us to watch you act, right? She was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, her original innocent and confused expression changed instantly. Suddenly, her figure flashed and she directly retreated into that patch of white light, revealing a smug smile. I didn't think that I would still be seen through. When did you guys start suspecting me? When you appeared in the room downstairs. Lone Moon wasn't in a hurry as he explained slowly. Downstairs? She was stunned for a moment. Didn't that mean that she had exposed herself right from the start? How did you guys know that I was acting? Lone Moon rolled his eyes and gave her an expression that said, "We live upstairs. If the old man downstairs was really killed by that innkeeper, it's impossible that we didn't hear anything. Moreover, there were no bloodstains on those two people's knives." Those two people with knives heard the waiter's voice and ran up hurriedly. If they really killed someone first, how would they have the time to clean their knives before coming up? I see. She looked stunned. I didn't think that I would be exposed so early. Since you guys already knew that there was something wrong with me, why did you bring me all the way here? Since we're already here, we naturally want to find out. Lone Moon said, "What exactly do you want to do by luring us here?" "What do I want to do?" She suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes darkened and instantly filled with malice. She gritted her teeth and said, "Of course I want to turn you bunch of scum into ashes." Lone Moon was stunned. He kept feeling that her hatred came out of nowhere. "We don't even know you. Why did you do this?" "Why? Ha ha ha." She laughed even louder. Her eyes turned cold, and the hatred that was like the sea suddenly poured out. "You invaded my world for no reason, and you're asking me why?" "Invaded?" Lone Moon was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief. "You're a manager. How was that possible? Such a small world, was it really a plane?" "Are you very surprised?" As if guessing what he was thinking, she laughed even colder. "Such a small plane also has a manager? It's a pity that you guys don't have the chance to leave this plane alive. The same goes for your manager." As she spoke, she suddenly raised her hand. The pair in Xin Ying's hand suddenly turned into several rays of white light, forming 4 walls of light that directly locked her inside. Chapter 548. Master. I Ching was shocked. Just as he was about to save her, the light wall suddenly flashed with white light and disappeared in an instant. Instead, it appeared behind Fong Fong. This is a restriction I created using the power of the original source. No one can escape. Your target from the start was Shining? Lone Moon's expression darkened. He suddenly thought of that mermaid. It was a creature that lived in the sea, yet it appeared by the river. Moreover, it wasn't just the mermaid, the city lord, and even the black shop. They were all used by her to test them. That's right. Who asked her to be your manager? I originally wanted to get rid of her directly, Fong Fong said indifferently. Unfortunately, I underestimated her strength. Even if I retracted the immortal spirit chi of this plane, she still has such terrifying strength. I could only lure you here and use the power of the original source to suppress your abilities. Lone Moon was stunned. He subconsciously sensed his own plane. Indeed, he could not sense it at all. And the plane door was locked. No wonder she brought them here. So she wanted them to have no way out. Are you done with your nonsense? I Ching's expression darkened. He took a step forward and pulled out his sword. Do it. Fong Fong laughed coldly. She did not take them seriously at all. She turned and glanced at Shining, who was trapped in the white light. The manager is already in my hands. This is the land of the original source. With your strength you can't. Before she finished speaking, a terrifying sword chi suddenly slashed towards her. It carried an aura that could sweep away everything, and a thick murderous aura. She subconsciously dodged to the side to avoid the sword aura. Her heart turned cold. If she had not dodged fast enough, the sword chi would have already hit her. How was this possible? He turned to look at I Ching in disbelief, only to see a stormy expression. He said word by word, "Don't take out your dirty thing. Give it to my master." Lone Moon. Hashtag on a chef's self-cultivation hashtag. So the main point of your anger was only because the other party gave Shining a pair? Should he be glad that he held it in for so long and cooperated with him to finish the act before he flew into a rage? Chef, on the other hand, had already rushed out with his sword in hand. Instantly, the surrounding sword chi became even thicker, bringing with it a sense of killing. Fong Fong was forced to retreat all the way, getting closer to the place where the origin energy was even denser. But she discovered that it was completely useless. I Ching's movements did not slow down. Instead, he sped up. How could this be? Her face was filled with disbelief. She had clearly entered the source and controlled the manager. How could they still have this kind of ability, unless you are managers too? Her eyes widened. What? Did you only recognize me now? Lone Moon replied with a smile. How could there be 3 of them at once? She gritted her teeth as the hatred in her eyes deepened. Out of the 3 of them, the one called Shining was clearly the strongest. She was even somewhat unfathomable. That was why she instinctively thought that she was the manager, and these 2 were merely her assistants. She could tell that there was a contract between the 3 of them, but she did not expect that all 3 of them were managers. As the manager of a dimension, they were actually willing to become someone else's assistant. Was there something wrong with their brains? But she did not have time to think about it. I Ching's sword move had already forced her into a corner. She gritted her teeth and her expression darkened. She did not know what she had done. The plane's original source, which was originally as calm as spring water, suddenly began to boil. Following that, there was a series of angry roars. One by one, giant beasts emerged from the water and attacked I Ching. Holy shit! This manager actually raised demon beasts in the source. Lone Moon was shocked. He cursed under his breath. Then he pulled out his sword and rushed out. The demon beasts raised in the power of the original source were naturally not simple. They were no longer demon beasts but divine beasts. Yet they could not use any sorcery here. They could only rely on their swords to resist. It was even more difficult to deal with them. Not to mention that a group of them came at once. Lone Moon rushed in. Together with Chef, they each took one side and began to fight. For a moment, the white light was filled with sword chi. Fortunately, although these divine beasts were strong, they did not seem to have any sentience. Even if they could not use sorcery, and the manager's abilities were suppressed in many ways, it was only a matter of time before they could defeat these giant beasts. They were just trapped inside for a while, and could not get out. An Fong Fong, who had been chased and beaten by Chef, also got an instant chance to catch her breath. She retreated directly. Her injuries were not light. Her body was full of cuts from the sword chi. The cuts were so deep that her bones could be seen. But for some reason, the wounds were not healing. She was not suppressed. To a manager, these were obviously just insignificant small injuries. You are using your own power to raise them? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded beside her ear. Fong Fong was stunned. She turned around and realized that the one who spoke was Shining, who was trapped in the white light. She was still holding a fruit in her hand and gnawing on it. She did not panic at all. Instead, she tilted her head and looked at her curiously. That's not right. She suddenly changed her words. I should say, you are using your own power to nourish this broken plane? So she could not even heal herself. Her eyes widened suddenly. She looked like she had been poked. Her eyes were full of wariness. Why? Shining continued. She would not be able to hold on much longer if this went on. Why? She stood up as if her embarrassment had turned into anger. The hatred in her eyes was about to overflow. She gritted her teeth and roared. I want my plane to not collapse. I want the living beings in my world to live. I want them to be swallowed by chaos. You murderers of the Big Tao organization, what right do you have to ask me why? Big Tao organization? Shining frowned. We are not. Ha, is there a difference? She laughed coldly. You will be soon. Otherwise, why would you appear here? As long as you kill me and destroy this plane that is already in a terrible state and struggling at death's door, you will get the right to join the organization. Right? Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. You mean we were sent here actually as a test to join the organization? Why? You don't even know this? The coldness in her eyes intensified. She said mockingly. Then the Big Tao organization is really blind this time. They actually invited a few people who don't understand the situation. Shen Ying's eyes darkened. She finally put down the fruit in her hand and reached out to break it forcefully. There was only a tearing sound. The layer of white light that trapped them instantly split open like a piece of white paper. Fong Fong's eyes bulged instantly. Shen Ying walked directly towards her. She stopped a step away from her and said in a low voice, Come, let's have a chat. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.